ready for action.
Wonderful. 0344 499 1000. James Max is here on the other side of the news between 7 and 10. I will be back tomorrow between 4 and 7 with Talk Drive, and I hope you can join me for that. It will, of course, be New Year's Eve. Thanks to everybody who has sent me a message today or lifted the phone. We haven't been able to get everybody in, unfortunately, but there's more chance tomorrow. And, of course, James on the other side of the news, you can give him a ring as well. Thanks to the production team, the top team behind the glass. There's loads to discuss with James coming up in a minute. And as I say, I will be back at 4 o'clock tomorrow. I will see you then. Thank you so much for your company.
I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
I have just returned from Buckingham Palace to form the next government of this great nation.
Take a look at what happened.
I immediately knew it was very serious, that we were under attack.
The time has come, and this surely is England's time. Williams, who scores, and Spain lead. Shot from distance is in. It is Cole Palmer. Low ball in on the far ball, slides it in.
An absolute killer of a goal.
I agree with the protest, but I don't think the violence was anywhere near necessary.
No, I mean, I don't think anyone, Nigel, would ever think that the violence was the answer at all.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me.
If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs. The people that came in, they're eating the cats.
Liberal left couldn't understand that this man could be anything other than the great newsreader, a man of integrity.
Is it possible in any...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
And a very good evening to you. It's just gone 2 minutes past 7 o'clock. It's me, James Max, with you until 10 o'clock here on Talk, this Monday, the 30th of December. So, all sorts of things going to be coming up in the programme. And this week, well, I'm covering for Kevin O'Sullivan on this evening show. So, coming up, I'm going to be joined by Claire Muldoon. She's going to be joining me in the studio. We'll be going through the day's big stories, including getting young people back to work. We'll talk about warnings over weight loss drugs and the scandal where working from home turns into working from the beach. Plus, Labour keeps saying that they'll smash the gangs. We've heard that quite a lot, but still the migrants arrive over our shores, and we'll be talking about those plans. Plus, talking of plans, the further north you go in our country, the less likely you are to be doing anything over New Year because everything seems to be utterly cancelled, or alternatively, there's travel chaos. So we'll be talking about that and bring you up to date. Plus, Elon Musk. Does he think the UK is a good place to invest? We'll be finding out about that. But first, we're going to be talking about this. Apparently, all students need to appreciate the diversity of Britain. It's just a load of politically motivated woke ideology, isn't it? We're going to be talking about what the Education Secretary has said and indeed what it might mean for our educational system. But I want to know from you this evening, what should our children be taught at school? So the telephone number you need is 0344 499 1000. What should our children be taught at school? That's what I want to ask you. And you might have your views. You might be a teacher, you might be a parent, a grandparent, whatever it is, or alternatively an employer. And you just want people to be able to come to school or from university and just be able to do things. You know, and whatever those things may be, you might think, well, you've got some pretty good and clear ideas. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. You can send me a text, 87222. Start your text with the word talk. And you can send me a WhatsApp if you like. And you can go to X, if you like, at talkTV, at the James Max. Now, this is after Bridget Phillipson. So she's the Education Secretary. She's begun a review to refresh what is taught in schools, pledging to breathe new life into our outdated curriculum. Now, we can probably all agree that education needs to be constantly reviewed, particularly in an environment where technology is moving fast. According to the Telegraph, though, they reveal that the Department for Education's terms of reference for the overhaul explicitly say that the department aims to create a curriculum that reflects the diversities of our society. Ding, 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 warning bells, hello, hello, woke-tastic. Not that, oh, we'd like to have some really good skills and we need to concentrate on maybe mathematics or overseas languages or ensure that we look into our rich history or maybe through the tapestry of some of the finest pieces of literature in the world, which happen to be originated in the English language. No, let's not talk about that. Let's talk about appreciating the diversity of Britain. Oh, balderdash. Seriously? So we've got an education secretary who, la-di-da, went to Oxford. I mean, you come out of Oxford, you go and work for your local council for 2 years, and then you spend the rest of the time being a politician, and that gives you the qualifications to overhaul our educational system, does it? You've never employed anybody, you've never done anything useful, and suddenly you come into this job, all ideologically driven, and, by the way, you're supporting this idea that VAT on independent school fees, taking away choice from parents. If parents want to spend their money on their child's education because they look at the system that is available to them free, gratis, nothing, they turn their back on that, so they're double taxing themselves already. They're turning their back on something that's free. They're deciding to pay for it, and then this government, for the first time in hundreds of years, decides, oh no, we can't afford it, we must put tax on it. Not driven by need to raise money. They could raise it from other means if they really wanted to. They seem to have done that in every other way. No, this is ideologically driven nonsense from a government that simply doesn't accept the fact that parents should be able to choose how to educate their children, and your children. So, that's my view. What's yours? 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. I want you to tell me, what should our children be taught at school? And how do you respond to this idea that the curriculum is going to be overhauled, not necessarily with changes to what they're actually taught, but no, we must appreciate the diversities of our society. We must help produce young people who appreciate the diversity of Britain. Oh, bore off. Seriously? If I was a parent, which I'm not, and I was going to be looking for my children to be educated, I'd be working even harder to ensure that they could go to a private school where they don't have to learn this BS. Anyway, I've had a rant. You join the conversation if you would. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. Well, joining me live in the studio is Claire Muldoon. She's a broadcaster. I dare say she's got some strong views. Claire, good evening.
Hi, James. Lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you too.
Happy Hanukkah. And soon to be, Happy New Year.
Yeah, soon to be. I've already had some nonsense. Why do we wish... It's like...
What?
We wish Happy New Year for like the week before.
Yeah.
And then it goes on. And then at what stage can you stop saying Happy New Year?
I know.
Ugh. Anyway, what do you make of... I've had a rant on Bridget Phillipson. What do you make on her?
I completely and utterly agree with every single word that you've said.
Wow.
You know,
that's a first.
That is, well, we speak about, you know, diversity. I would say it's division. I would say it's dumbing down. Before Christmas, they wanted to eradicate and remove Latin and classics from the curriculum of the national schools, which is ridiculous. You mentioned the English language. English language is taught, if people study English literature at A-level or higher level in Scotland. Chaucer. The change in language from Chaucer to Shakespeare, to modern day, and even now with the Oxford English Dictionary, they're putting in text speak, they're putting in roadmen, they're putting in different dialects as words. So the English language shifts all the time. We've watched the magnificent Wolf Hall, The Mirror and the Light, right?
I'm not a fan.
Well, we can discuss the pros and cons of that, but
I don't really like the writing.
I thought Hilary Mantel is a superb writer.
Oh, no, she just annoyed me.
I actually, as a Catholic, I actually felt sorry for Cromwell. It was written that well. However, we see the we see and we can latch on to the importance of history. And anyone coming into this country really ought to appreciate the history because, as you know, history blends present day and we learn from to deal with the future. If we eradicate all of that, if we try and rewrite history, it's a really dangerous path to go down.
But also, I agree with the dumbing down point in particular, because if you have a look at our cultural history, I'm really sorry if it comes from white Britain.
We can't change that.
We can't and we shouldn't change that. Now, should we bring in teaching and you know, experiences from around the world? Yeah, sure.
Yes.
And absolutely, and it shouldn't just be from our perspective
I'll tell you why they should, because a lot of the classes now are diverse and are mixed up of different social, demographic, racial types. So we have to learn from different cultures. But my goodness me, if you're in a comprehensive stroke academy now, as they're all called, well, English curriculum should still be the benchmark, the threshold to reach. We should not be dumbing down because it's the children that are normally going to be sent to these schools that will be let down, James.
Because one of the people who was or is behind this whole review, because, you know, Bridget Phillipson is just the mouthpiece of this whole thing, has criticised Tony Blair's government for what they tried to do in terms of giving people the opportunity to attain results. Yeah. Because results are important.
Well,
and I'm sorry if some people just can't deal with exams and don't cope.
Yeah.
And I get that. And I think that we took away our polytechnics and our practical skills, which we shouldn't have done, because some people just aren't built to do those exams.
Yeah.
Fine. But if you dumb down the whole system so you deal with the children who can't really cope with exams and you know, you have a system that is no longer rigorous. How on earth is this country going to produce the people who are genuinely at the forefront of development?
And change. Right? Development and change. Because you need the intelligentsia. Well, tertiary education, James, I will tell you right now, does not bode well for free thinkers, because unfortunately academia is filled with left-wing think tanks. What these kids get now, Judith Butler as a norm, the progressive feminist writer, philosopher, it's ridiculous. It really is. And there is no opportunity. We've seen children, we've seen young girls at Leeds University being cancelled because she had gender-critical views. Really? This is supposed to be, you know, the way that kids can explore their minds. They can sit down and debate and tutorials. But also, regardless they can't do that, and they don't do that.
But regardless of your views on whether gender or indeed anything else, if you are not able to discuss these topics and indeed improve or increase your knowledge, then you're never going to get anywhere, because otherwise you get taught an ideology, you get taught something and saying, well, this is what it is. And it's either this exists or this doesn't exist, and this is racist and this is the... Well, and then you can't have any conversation about anything, because I think the whole conversation about, you know, whether it's race and religion, all these things, which are hugely complicated, until or unless you're able to have those conversations and understand and learn, we're never going to get anywhere.
And it's actually going to get worse. Because my youngest daughter is now just freshly graduated, and the grad jobs now are not the same as when we left university. The grad jobs now are very much online focused, and if you tick the wrong box, they say they want free thinkers. They say they want...
They don't really want free thinkers. They want people who think like them.
That's exactly it. Ugh. And the way the algorithms are written, that's unfortunately the people who write these things are going to get the jobs. It's so homogenised.
It is homogenised. So this is why I'm asking the question, what do you think our children should be taught at school? Give me a call. It's 0344 499 1000. I'd like you to get involved in this conversation, because I think what happens in our schools tomorrow will influence what is happening in our country in 10, 20, 30 years' time. If you have a look at the influence even of the Blair years and some of the changes that were made, some perhaps were positive and some... They spent their whole blooming time sort of building new schools, forgetting it's not so much the building. I mean, I went to a fee-paying school. It was literally falling down. Yeah. It was the quality of the teaching, the size of the class. Where is the discussion? The first thing this wretched Minister Bridget Phillipson did, we must have breakfast clubs. Where did the responsibility to feed your children come to the nation?
Yeah, I know.
I'm a taxpayer. Stop using my money to give them blooming breakfast cereal.
I would go one step further. I would say it's not the job of the catering department, nor is it the job of the teaching staff to monitor that.
No.
Right? And especially where you get some
and they arrive at school and they can't even eat properly. They can't.
Some of them aren't even toilet trained, James.
It's like, where is the responsibility? You know, individual responsibility and individual choice. We've forgotten both of those things. Yeah. Now, do I want a society where people who genuinely need help aren't able to get it? Yeah, I want them to be able to get it. But it should be need help as opposed to just fancy it.
Yeah.
It's just like, you know, this word need needs to be brought back into...
Need and service. You know, and the ability to see, where that need is as well, instead of making it a form-filling exercise. And I think your viewers and your listeners will need to take some accountability and responsibility for this as well, to have a view, because it's going to affect every single one of us.
It certainly is. I mean, do you think that, for example, people are beginning to maybe see through what Labour has been doing since they came to power? That, for example...
No, I think from day one they did, from the reneging on the winter fuel allowance.
Well, of course. So if I said here, private school tax breaks, a luxury we cannot afford. I genuinely do not understand why or how this policy has managed to get through almost...
And you know the
unopposed.
The other thing, they say every single penny of that saving is going to recruit 6,500 teachers for the state system. How on earth can it from day one, when the money will not start to be filtered in to the end of this tax year? So all of this rhetoric about, from day one it's going to be great, we're going to put the money from that pot into that pot. I'm sorry. Wake up, smell the coffee, guys. It ain't happening.
Well, this is why, we don't have... I don't know, joined up thinking that really understands the policy and the implications of the policy.
They don't care.
No, they don't care, because if they really wanted to make life difficult for private schools, all they have to do is make the state school system better. And then parents will not choose to send their children to a fee-paying school. They don't want necessarily to do this, but they want to have the best education. And if I look at what my grandfather did, he was the youngest of 11 children. He left school at 15. He wanted to make the life of his children and grandchildren better, which is why he really grafted, if you like, and made a success of his life so that he could give that gift of education to his children and grandchildren.
And that's
his choice.
Sadly, as you said, as you alluded to earlier, self-choice and totalitarianism is completely gone, because people would rather rely on the state, and it's the way the state is making us. Even TfL, even for the underground system, drink water on a hot day, drink water, hold on to the handrail. We're being told constantly what to do, what to think. We're also being told what to say, and how we're being managed so microscopically. I am just sick of it. There's no free speech in this country whatsoever. They say there is. But you'll end up in the gulag.
Well, you will end up in the gulag. Anyway, what should our children be taught at school? We'll take your calls next.
Manners.
Well, we'll come to that in a second. Yes, manners, don't interrupt. 03444991000 is the telephone number. Do get involved in the conversation. I would like to hear from you here on Talk. So we'll take your calls next, plus we'll consider some of the other big stories. That's all coming up with me, James Max, here on Talk.
caused him heartache. That really hurt him, I think, in the end, in not getting reelected and allowing Ronald Reagan to come in as a new, fresh voice of hope. So, he only served one term. He also, though unfortunately, came in at a time because of the Iranian situation. There was an energy crisis, which led to gas lines. You had people lining up for miles.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
21 minutes past 7 o'clock. It's me, James Max, with you until 10. With your evening show, Claire Muldoon is in the studio with me, and I'm asking the question, what should our children be taught at school? The reason I ask is because apparently our national curriculum needs to be more diverse, and we need to have diversities of our society reflected in what people are taught to appreciate the diversity of Britain. Apparently that's more important than all the other stuff. Really? 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. Cindy is in Michigan in the United States of America. Hello, Cindy.
Hi, James. It's so nice to see you. You are missed. Very missed.
Well, there we go. I'll be on all this week.
And then we hope to see you back soon.
Well, that's not necessarily in my power, but fingers crossed, eh? Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I certainly hope so, because you know what? I always tuned in, and I know a lot of other people did too. So, yeah.
Well,
I really hope so. If the powers that be, if they're smart, though, you're a keeper.
Well, that's very kind. Anyway.
World class.
World class. So, what can you tell us, all the way from the United States of America, what can you tell us about what our children should learn in school in Britain?
A lot. Let's go back to education only. Enough with this gender, pronouns, gender ideology, all these ideologies, be kind, do the, enough with that. Let's get back to basics again. Education.
But surely children do need to understand the environment in which they sit, because if there are people of different genders and orientations and backgrounds and all that sort of business, the more information that people have about the nicer they're going to be to their fellow colleagues, aren't they?
We don't want to confuse children who don't even know about genders and switching sex. They don't know. A lot of them, they're going to get confused, and then it'll be worse.
Well, they're not going to get confused. It just might mean that for those who don't necessarily fit into society norms, they'll at least know that they're not going to be ostracised. I mean, I don't think you need to spend that much time talking about it, because I seem to remember when I was at school, quite a lot of things were discussed in terms of gender and identity and orientation, all that sort of business. It can be dealt with in a lesson or two. You don't need to spend your whole time dealing with it.
But 5 years old and pronouns?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that's the right time.
We want to teach them they and them. I mean, that's and they and them, I don't believe in that language.
Right.
Also.
Well, some people might. I mean, I'm less fussed about that, and I think I'm more fussed about, the key skills that I want people to be able to have at school. I mean, and I think there are things where, literacy is very important, but then so is numeracy. I mean, some of the people who come out of schools, and one of the big differences I noticed when I went to work for an American firm that was predominantly filled with Americans, is that Americans were, first of all, their lateral thinking was actually quite constricted. However, their numeracy was far better than the Brits.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I that's food for thought for me.
Well, I just found that, a lot of Americans have been sort of taught in a sort of very sort of simple lane. And although they had a very good knowledge, they weren't necessarily equipped to really think, to use a very boring phrase, outside of the box. So they were very rigid in their views because they weren't taught to challenge. And I think that being taught to challenge, being taught to think, critical thinking as opposed to critical race theory, is far more important. But I think, all the woke-tastic nonsense that seems to be thrown at children, I agree with you. I think there's a time and a place for it, and quite a lot of it is at home. Have I bored you?
No, not at all. No, there was a pause. No, no. I think that, what, I'm going to say it. I think that English people are far better educated. There's something better, actually, that you're doing, but not right now. Right now, there seems to be some backwards things going on.
Oh, yeah.
From what I understand, that I don't like. But before, like back in the day, I'll sound old, the English people were doing it better. Yeah, you speak a lot more eloquently. It's a fact.
But it comes down to understanding the language and how to deploy it. And it's not about accent. It's about if you have a really good understanding of the English language and you realise that, there are so many different words to describe the same thing, but they're all slightly nuanced, then it allows you to communicate more effectively. And if you're able to communicate effectively, then you can bring your ideas, you can discuss ideas, you can choose better ways to do things, you can communicate your instructions or your wishes, however it may be. And this is part of the problem, that I think that very often people are taught, if you like, and Claire, I mean, by all means, but, we're so worried about, offending people or saying the wrong thing or whatever it is, that we forget that the English language is rich with so many different ways to express yourself.
So many different ways.
And we need to be able to make sure that people are equipped to use it. It doesn't mean that the language should be stuck in aspic and never change. I love new words when they're created and invented.
Well, that's what we spoke about at the top of the hour when your show first started. And it's the beauty, and it is the tapestry of the English language. And I'm sorry, if we dumb down English language, then we dumb down our ability to communicate at every single level. For all of the points that you've just said, giving instruction, receiving instruction, bringing people together, giving the collegiate... If you imagine if English is completely dumbed down, how on earth... I mean, it seems as if it is with our Labour government at the moment. It's completely dumbed down in terms of the messaging they're sending out. None of it makes any sense.
Well, it's dumbed down in terms of the necessary skills required to get into that cabinet. I mean, we are, as I've said on many occasions, governed by cretins.
Look, IKEA couldn't even put together the cabinet that Keir Starmer's done. It is horrific.
No, I'd rather go to IKEA, to be honest. I think it'd be more effective and probably last longer. What should our children be taught at school is what I'm asking you. Heather is in Govan. Heather, good evening.
School, I thought, it's like teaching kids how to use their mind and to have lateral thinking with logic, with common sense, with common courtesy and common decency, and have that freedom of speech in school and allow kids to be kids and learn how to be nurtured and to develop in their own way. And one thing about the school of thought in education, especially with maths and English, that's the most essential parts of the education.
Well, it is, because I suppose what we really need to think about is what are the basic skills that everybody needs to have, and then what are the skills that we need to sort of pick out so that people, when they begin to show their adeptitude to certain different either subjects or interests, or, it could be music and art and drama, it could be science and technology, it could be languages, it might be English and maths, it might be sort of, basic thinking or otherwise, but there are so many different things.
Creative.
How to be creative, absolutely.
Mind. And have that creative mind and use their mind freely to explore how to build a car or how to make an aeroplane or a speedboat, and how to be productive in life. Because the life equation of learning about different occupations and
I mean, how to be productive in life, I think is important. I mean, Claire.
But also, you hit a very, very important point there, Heather, when you spoke about, you know, the ability to play. Kids now in playgrounds, I'm talking about primary school kids, they can't go around and play British Bulldog or school ropes, jumping ropes, they can't play leapfrog, they can't play with conkers. Their idea and their ability to take risk and manage risk, even at that young age, they know how far they can go. Now, unfortunately, they don't. Everything has been homogenised so much, everything has been sanitised so much. They don't know how to take turns. There is no such thing as a winner now in sports days. I think you'll agree with me, that is just potty.
I do think it is.
I mean, when I've done sports at school, and I've won and I've lost.
Yeah,
and
life.
It's like when I was playing snooker in a snooker tournament, and I got to the quarterfinals and I lost. And I took that. I didn't took that as a failure. No. I shook hands.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, you get to the quarter-final. I mean, frankly, I'd like to be better at snooker. But, Heather, you make a really important point, which, and so do you, Claire, which is you've got to learn to win, but also you need to learn to lose.
And in losing, I'm sure you get the resilience.
And
there's
so you
another
should.
key word. To get back on your horse, get back on the cue, polish that Q-tip up, and away you go.
So, another story which is in the news, and Heather, thank you for your call. Another story in the news is how we get young people back to work. So, we've got people who are off sick, and we've got a surge in ill health. It means that young men are almost twice as likely to be off sick as a decade ago. 3/4 of those off saying they have no interest in working. The rise in mental health problems. And, of course, look, some people genuinely are going to be ill. They're going to be sick. They're going to have issues, all of that stuff. But certainly when I was growing up, I mean, you know, and even when I started the world of work, I mean, you know, if people were slacking, you just said you're slacking. And, you know, it was tough. And you just, like, get back on the horse, get back in. And if you can't hack it, go away. Leave.
Yeah. Can't do that anymore. And with the new employment legislation that Angela Rayner's trying to haul in, if you employ anyone now, they've got the immediate rights instead of a 6 month.
Well, we'll discuss this story in a little bit more detail in a moment. Plus, we'll be taking more of your calls on what should be taught at our schools. And what do you want our children to be taught? 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. We will take more of your calls next here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
So it is 7:35. And it's me, James Max, with you till 10 here on Talk. Claire Muldoon is in the studio with me, and we're taking your calls on what should our children be taught at school. This is with news that Bridget Phillipson, she's the Education Secretary, she's going to be doing a review of the national curriculum. OK, good, you might say, until you realise that the focus of that is on the diversities of our society and helping produce young people who appreciate the diversity of Britain. That's not going to get us jobs. That's not going to move our economy forward. That's not going to... Look, by all means, teach decency, how to be polite, understanding other religions and all that stuff. You can do that in a few days. I mean, it's just like done. And yes, people need to understand all of these things. But that shouldn't be at the root of our curriculum. You know, decolonizing our, you know, history. It's like, oh, please. I mean, it sounds like the teaching of this ghastly critical race theory. Oh, you know, I'm going to spend the rest of my life apologising because I'm white. I mean, seriously? Sorry, I just had a little rant there.
No, you can have a rant.
I mean, the thing is also...
Rant away.
Yeah, I mean, look, I come from a bit of the community that's a minority as we celebrate Hanukkah.
Yeah.
And look, it is important to understand religions and other religions and all this sort of business, and that can be done very adequately without making it the central point. It shouldn't be this. The central point is, can you read? Can you communicate? Can you add up? And then also, can you understand the tax system? So when your government is doing something absolutely daft and ideological, you can spot it.
Yeah.
Because so many people cannot spot it. And they'll say, oh, but, you know, it's unfair that, you know, schools receive, you know, some kind of tax break. It's not a tax break. It's just not adding tax to something that should be free of tax.
Yes.
It should be free. In the same way, why don't you pay VAT on schools, you know, school children's clothing? Because it should be free of tax.
Yep, and food as well is VAT-free.
Yeah, well, some food is.
Oh, right.
Well, compared to... And then all the other taxes that we get. There are so many taxes that we get that your net effective tax rate, if you're not careful, can be 70-75%.
I know.
And it's just like, why bother? You know, we ask why young people can't be bothered to go to work. There's lots of people who can't be bothered because they get taxed. Why should you just go to work to give it all to the government so they can go and spend it on some feckless parents who can't be bothered to look after their own child?
Yes. Or
I'm
worse.
quite angry tonight, aren't I?
You are, aren't you? Thankfully, I'm not on the receiving end of this anger.
I'll tell you why.
Why?
Because I've started doing my blooming tax return.
I finished mine.
She just winked at me.
Never had.
And says
never had a day off feel sick either.
Well, I'm trying to avoid that. And says one lesson should be called respect and basic skills. Do you think that should be taught to some of my colleagues here?
And how to use cutlery as well.
Yeah, where's that?
And how to set a
I got
table.
thrown off a reality show because they were filming when we were just larking about, and I said that there was some comment about, you know, HKLP, holds knife like pen, because I think that people should be taught how to use their cutlery properly.
Absolutely. It's not a shovel. It's not a shovel.
They shoved that into something as one of the reasons why I was booted off, because apparently I had an attitude issue. Just like, no, I don't.
You have an attitude? Well,
no, I don't think I do. I really genuinely don't mind.
What's the old idiom? No smoke without fire?
I'll tell you what I really struggle with.
What?
Is when I went to America, I've never seen such revolting eating habits. Seriously. I mean, this whole cutting everything up on your plate like you're a 6-year-old and then stabbing it with your fork.
Do you know what the worst one is, though?
The shovel.
The knife stroke fork. The two in one.
Oh, that's revolting.
That is just horrific.
Having said that, I'm quite modern when it comes to eating with your hands. I mean, there are certain foods...
Pardon? Asparagus and pizza, end.
And burgers.
Well, of course, yeah.
And chips.
Sometimes.
French fries, certainly.
Sometimes.
Yeah, and a takeaway, fine. And chopsticks, yes, please.
Chopsticks, yeah. I mean, that's a form of cutlery and culture.
Oh, there's a YouTuber and Instagrammer who I quite like because he's quite funny. So he's the guy who caused the cucumber sensation.
What was the
He's known as the
sensation?
cucumber guy. So
I'm on neither.
The reason that cucumber sales spiked in earlier in the year around the world, and in particular in Australia and Great Britain and America, is because of this Canadian. Who
Trudeau.
So he uses a whole cucumber and he makes his cucumber salads, but his eating habits are absolutely disgusting.
What does he
eat? He eats like a hungry spaniel. It's absolutely revolting.
Oh my goodness me. Oh.
children should be taught how to read properly. And then, if you choose to break the rules, I remember 20 years ago when I first started doing speech-based radio, they said, in order to break the rules, you need to know the rules.
Yeah.
And it's rather like, you know, when an actor breaks the fourth wall on screen, you know that they've learnt how to do the art of acting.
Craft, yeah.
Before they then break that fourth wall. And then because they know the rules...
Who's broken that fourth wall for you recently? Anyone?
Anyone?
Mark Rylance, even though you didn't like Wolf Hall?
No, I didn't like Wolf Hall.
But you didn't like it because of the writing?
Did
you not still appreciate Mark Rylance?
I think didn't sort of layer cake and all that sort of stuff, did
James
it?
Norton, for me, is an extremely good actor.
He's a very good actor.
He's an extremely good actor.
There we go. Meanwhile...
And Ben Whishaw.
Oh, he's marvellous.
I saw Waiting for Godot. He was brilliant.
You see, he's so amazing in so many different roles. And then also, voice of Paddington. Yes, please, thank you.
Oh, yes. Have you watched
such a good choice.
Black Doves on Netflix?
No, had this on my list.
That is fantastic.
I was busy watching Rivals.
Oh, I saw that one. I
It's
binged
so good.
that. I think I was late for Peter Cardwell's show here once because I was watching it.
Oh, right. Well, there's a second series coming out.
Brilliant.
Because a friend of mine who came to review the papers a few weeks ago, he's going to be lead director on some of them.
Really?
Yes.
Who?
His name's Elliot. He's very good. Anyway, I don't like him at the moment because he's just got back from holiday. He's got so much sunshine, he's turned himself into a mahogany sideboard. Anyway...
Well, he'd get a part in it, and then he's supposed to be directing it, no?
Yeah.
1980s
anyway,
kitsch.
If you want to give us a call, it's 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. What should our children be taught at school? Meanwhile, just on to another subject before we get back to that. There is a story about weight loss drug warnings.
Yep.
Now, I think there are two levels of warning on this. What do you make of the Wegovy, Ozempics and all this sort of business?
Right. From someone who should be on one of them technically because of two health issues that would make me a high, absolutely right for Ozempic. You can't get it for people that need it medically on the NHS, right? You've then got the Wegovy that is for weight loss and not for anything else. You've then got the celebrity status attached to that. But also on the flip side, you've got the deaths of predominantly women, because for us it is seen to be, the best thing to attain is a normal BMI, etc., etc., and to look a certain way, i.e. not overweight. Now, to purchase these drugs online, it's an incredibly dangerous thing to do. Why not, if you really do need to lose weight, do it the natural way? Do it the natural way.
You see, the other point that I have about it, knowing some people who have been on it, and it's been very effective, except it doesn't teach you the difficult choices that you are going to have to make when you stop taking it. If you haven't taken...
Christo admitted to being on it, and then he had to stop it.
Yeah, and the thing
is... lots of people that we both know are on it, and yet they'll never get off it.
And the thing is that if you don't change the habit... So, for example, over the last few years, I've lost, 2.5, 3 stone.
Yeah.
Because I got very fat. And I could probably do with losing another one, which means I need to be slightly more disciplined and probably drink a little less.
Yeah,
and, and I do eat healthily, just probably too much of it. And this time of year, a lot of chocolate. Delicious. Anyway, setting that aside... it's about making choices, and it's about being informed about the choices that you take. And if you don't reform yourself, then you are never going to be better. There is no quick fix.
Exactly.
And it's the same with, when everybody went off for liposuction and all these other things. It doesn't do you good. Terrible.
Well, it does. I think that's not true to say that. It does do one good. It does one's the mental health, good if you see results. And physically it does. Physically, it really does.
Certainly does. Now, if you are listening or watching to us and you want to join the conversation, you can do so. It's 0344 499 1000. You can join in the conversation about any of the topics that we're discussing, but also in particular, what should our children be taught at school is what I'm asking you. Let's just turn our attention to some of the socials. James, great programme. Well, Bob, thank you. Children should be taught family values, pride in Great Britain, the necessary to strive for success in every area of life. Yeah, but I think it goes further than that, because I think almost that should come from home. Sarah says, the education refresh should look at what they're teaching in private schools and bring that to the masses, instead of trying to drag everyone down to the bottom. Couldn't agree with you more, Sarah. I'm so happy my kids are out of the school system. I wouldn't put them in school now if I was starting out again. Kate in Stockport says the decolonialisation movement is highly political, evolving from communist influences. Labour has picked a very radical, intersectional feminist to review the curriculum. Yes, they have. Culture sits upstream of politics. If you want to take a country over politically, first you need to take down its culture. This is more about dismantling Western culture and Britain's sense of itself, says Kate in Stockport. Clay, you've got some fan mail here.
Have I?
You're so right. I watched a docudrama on Drake's ventures today. Walsingham and Burley's politicking, and Drake sent off to something. Seems a good hiding, but didn't happen at the delegate school, says Yvonne inside. You could have just written that in Spanish and I wouldn't understand it. Have I missed something there?
I don't know.
No, I don't know either. Jess in Dover says, hi, James and Claire. If there isn't one already, we should have a campaign for real education. Elon can fund it, a free resource for people to learn what actually happened. There we go. Right, 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number to join the conversation, and more stories from Claire and me. That's next on Talk.
Caused him heartache. That really hurt him, I think, in the end, in not getting reelected and allowing Ronald Reagan to come in as a new, fresh voice of hope. So, he only served one term. He also, though unfortunately, came in at a time because of the Iranian situation. There was an energy crisis, which led to gas lines. You had people lining up for miles.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
7:49 is the time. It's me, James Max, with you till 10 o'clock here on Talk. Claire Muldoon is in the studio with me. We've been having a right old rant about education. What should our children be taught at school? We'll come back to your calls in a moment. 0344 499 1000 on that. This one, Claire, on the social says, is it not the case that private schools are heavily funded by local council authorities?
No. They don't get any money from local council authorities. In fact, they actually give back 2 local comps and local state-run primary schools. They often give their land for sports days. They implement some teaching as well. They let them use the facilities, not in a patronising way at all, actually.
And that's the point.
Part of the charitable status that's now been removed. It's horrific.
It is horrific, and if I was a private school, I'd just say, right, all those deals where we give out all that stuff, forget it, not doing it anymore. Because I find it absolutely astonishing that you have, an education secretary. I mean, she's, in terms of what she said at the weekend, I mean, she's kind of sort of gaslighting everybody, with her views. That she's so myopic about what she says. This is, again,
Bridget
Phillipson.
The short-sightedness is incredibly apparent. It really, really is. I don't think she's absolutely got a grasp at all on what she's actually going to do and how that from the private schools is going to manifest. It is already starting to manifest over this Christmas period even the implementation of it, James, halfway through a school term.
I know.
What are parents supposed to do?
Even when the Liberal Democrats come against a policy like this, students and teachers across our education system are crying out for support. But we've been clear, the government's decision to tax education is the wrong approach. And then when you talk about, some of these...
I wonder where the report was that, thought that was a good idea.
I don't know.
Clearly, children will be removed from the private sector to be put into the state sector, which, at the moment, we're told is not fit for purpose. That's why they're having to do this. So all that's going to do is make the not fit for purpose even worse.
And they're also... not taking account of many people send children to a fee-paying school because of special educational needs. And it's because that the state system just cannot cope and does not cope. And that means that if those people have to or are forced back into the state system, you are influencing everybody's education because not everybody can learn at the same speed.
You're so right.
There we go.
Right.
Now, just one other quick story, which I do find absolutely astonishing. So this is council staff. They've been allowing people to work basically from the beach, according to this particular article, which, funnily enough, appears in the Daily Mail. It's kind of like, somebody on benefits has got a flat-screen television. It comes from that sort of school of...
Written by the Daily Mail travel vlogger. No, it's not.
No. I mean, I sort of take the view that if somebody can do their job from home, I sort of don't really care where they are, and if they're in a beach, they're in a beach. But, on the other hand, I think when people are overcompensating or employers are overcompensating...
Let me draw the line in the sand for you on this one, OK?
I mean, I've worked from abroad when I was on holiday.
Private sector, absolutely fine. Public sector, it's a big no-no from me.
Well, I think I might agree with you.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, particularly if they're working for a council.
Exactly.
I mean, councils, they're not using the offices that they've got.
No.
They're not really monitoring people.
No.
Performance and productivity has gone down. We've seen the stats that the productivity has gone down. And you ring people up and you can tell when you speak to them. They're just incompetent.
Barking, the kids in the crib crying, the doorbell goes, it's Amazon delivery. You know.
Meanwhile, let's go back to your call, shall we? What should children be taught at school? Jason is in... Where are you, Jason? Sheffield. Hello, Jason. Good evening.
Hello there. I'm in Sheffield indeed.
Excellent. So, what should children be taught at school, do you think?
I think they should be taught maths, English, A science of their choice. I think that should be taught 4 days a week. Get rid of subjects which aren't really relevant.
Like what?
And then...
What's not relevant? Well, I studied geography.
Are you telling me? Relevant, actually.
Geography is very relevant, Jason. I'll stand up for geography. That's what I studied.
Well, it is relevant, but you just...
Geography isn't like looking at a map, knowing where countries are.
No, it's
geography is human and physical geography. It's about urbanisation. It's about understanding the cities and the places that we live. It's understanding the work and the geographical considerations. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there which is very practical, Jason.
Well, here's the thing, you see, James, is that if you teach maths, English, and A science, whether that's chemistry, biology, whatever the child chooses as a third subject.
Yeah, but sometimes you need to have, in order for those sciences to work, you actually have to study all 3 of them. Because there's physics and chemistry, there's chemistry and biology, and there's biology and physics.
Not really, no.
Well, no, there is.
But what's your point?
What's your point, Jason?
The point is that they should teach the main subjects for the 4 days of the week, and on the Friday, teach them subjects such as life, changing a plug, changing a light bulb, cooking a meal.
Well,
So
I think some of those life skills, I would agree with you. I wouldn't necessarily say that you need a day a week to do that.
Sport.
Yeah, sport's important. What about art and music?
Arts and music.
Yeah.
Well, you can do that when you come out of school, can't you?
So you don't think because I think that arts and music should be taught to every child.
You go to college.
I think that art and music should be. Yeah, but you have to start it young.
Well, arts and music, you can learn that out of school. You haven't got to do it in school.
Yeah, but then that means that all the posh parents send their children to, music lessons, and then those who perhaps are of lesser means don't. And should it just be for posh people?
Well, no, because not everyone's going to teach the kids to play the piano. What you can't do is say to the parents, you have to teach them this, you have to teach them that. But parents need to bring their kids up properly with morals.
Well, they do, but then some parents will and some parents won't. I mean, what do you make of what Jason has to say?
I think Jason's made a couple of really good points. I think Jason wants people to learn life skills, which is hugely important, because we do not have enough plumbers, carpenters, chippies, bricklayers, etc. And we don't need to always bring them in from overseas in order to do those jobs.
Yeah.
And so home economics, as it used to be in my day.
I'm surprisingly practical, and I don't know whether it's because my dad, who did national service, made sure that all my brothers, and indeed I...
Polish a shoe and sew a button.
Polish a shoe, sew a button, change a plug, change a light bulb, do all this stuff. And in fact, I've become a heating engineer this week because I've had to get my boiler started. And it's not just pressing a button, I can tell you.
But back to art and music, though, I think it's a really good thing, because not every child is academic, as we've already extrapolated on.
No, indeed.
But some kids have got great voices, they can sing. Joy can be brought from that. They can join a choir. The collegiate form of that.
Anybody can do music.
So
and when I'm looking at a CV, I always look to see what extra stuff somebody's done.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, by all means, all your fantastic
You don't need
results.
to know Rachmaninoff's piano concertos. You don't need to know that Debussy is 4 waltzes. You don't need to know that level. But by gosh, if you know a really decent tune, as the young Gen Zers would say, CHOON, you've got it. You really have. And it's in the classics. I'll keep on saying it. It's in the classics. It's in history. The way that gets the future blending to the present.
Let's get a word from Lenny, who's in Ashford. Lenny, good evening.
Good evening, James.
Good evening, Lenny. So, what can you tell us?
Well, just, the subject you're just talking about.
Yes.
Schooling.
Yes.
I think there's 3 skills you definitely got to add today: math, English, and computer skills.
Oh.
And then you ask the child what they want to learn.
Right. What did they say? Nothing.
Well, then you've got to try and coax them into something. But what it is, ask the child what they want to learn, and then they will have more enthusiasm for it to do it.
Well, I guess enthusiasm is one thing, but then on the other hand, if we don't get a grip of this, I mean, what do you make of what the Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, has said? Do we need to have? Do we need to appreciate the diversity of Britain?
No, well, diversity, I truly believe, is the biggest danger to our country, because diversity is a wedge between people, and that is a danger.
There we go. Lenny, thank you very much indeed for your call. We will continue to take your calls throughout the programme. Claire, my goodness me, Time has flown fast. Thank you very much indeed.
You're very, very welcome.
For coming in to join us.
It was my absolute pleasure. Thank you for asking for me.
Wishing you a very happy new year. Hope
Wonderful.
you enjoy. And we will be turning our attention to 3 migrants who have died attempting to cross the channel yesterday morning. We'll be speaking to the human rights lawyer, Shab Khan. That's going to be next. Plus, we're going to be taking your calls on how on earth we see the end to those people just arriving on our shores. It's 0344 499 1000.
I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
I have just returned from Buckingham Palace to form the next government of this great nation.
Take a look at what happened.
I immediately knew it was very serious, that we were under attack.
The time has come, and this surely is England's time. Williams, who scores, and Spain lead. Shot from distance is in. It is Cole Palmer. Low ball in, or far ball, slides it in.
An absolute killer of a goal.
I agree with the protest, but I don't think the violence was anywhere near necessary.
No, I mean, I don't think anyone, Nigel, would ever think that the violence was the answer at all.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me.
If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in, they're eating the cats.
Liberal left couldn't understand that this man could be anything other than the great newsreader, man of integrity.
Is it possible in any way, shape or form that Keir Starmer didn't know about these facts?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Minutes past 8 o'clock is the time. It's me, James Max, with you till 10 here on Talk. Still to come, we're going to be turning our attention to the Labour-Tory reform election poll that's come out. Quite interesting results if there were to be a general election tomorrow. Has any ruling party seen their potential majority just evaporate in such a short space of time? Well, maybe not. We'll be talking to the former Labour MP, Simon Danchuk, about that. We'll also be finding out about the New Year travel chaos that seems to be upon us as we head towards yet another storm. Simon Calder, travel expert, he's going to be joining me later on in this hour. Plus, we continue to take your calls on what should our children be taught at school. And I want to turn our attention to Starmer smashing the gangs. He keeps saying they're going to smash the gangs. He keeps saying we're going to see an end to the small boats arriving on our shores. But if you have a look at the stats as produced by, well, the government themselves, on Christmas Day, 451 people arrived in 11 boats. 26th of December, 407 people arrived in 10 boats. 27th, 305 people in 5 boats. 28th, 322 people in 6 boats. And the 29th of December, 291 people in 6 boats. Now, 3 migrants died attempting to cross the channel yesterday morning, and still we see the boats come. So I want to know from you, not about when will Starmer smash the gangs, but what action should the Prime Minister take? So the telephone number for you is 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. At least 3 migrants drowned and 40 others were rescued while trying to board an overcrowded boat on Sunday amid a surge of illegal crossings of the English Channel since Christmas Day. So this was a boat carrying Sudanese migrants. It became overloaded when it's stormed by a group of Syrians, according to a local mayor. I mean, the story is just horrific. The human suffering is horrendous. The level of migration that still continues to take place on these small boats is criminal, in my view. And yet the government keeps saying they're going to stop it. They keep saying they're going to take action. Every possible action that they should have taken, they seem to be reversing, turning their backs on it and done nothing. Well, maybe they shouldn't be taking action. You tell me. But as far as I'm concerned, we see people who are crossing Europe, they're arriving in Europe. They're not necessarily being dealt with on the sort of continental Europe properly. They're still trying to make it to Britain for whatever reason, and so they do. And those boats keep coming. My view, the boats have to stop. We have to stop the boats. The cost of putting people up, the cost of the legal system, the cost of all of these things is undermining the genuine work that people are doing. And I'm not saying that nobody should be able to come to this country and nobody should be able to claim asylum, but I am saying that we need to stop these small boats. Anyway, let's find out what the human rights lawyer, Shoaib Khan, thinks about this. Shoaib, very nice to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us here on Talk. So, what do we make of the fact that the boats still keep coming?
Yes, thanks for having me. Well, of course, I mean, I think it's expected, really. Obviously, I mean, the tragic fact that this has now become known as, or, it has become the deadliest year on record in terms of these deaths. It just shows, like you were saying now, I mean, basically, we've just replaced the Tories' meaningless slogans with Labour's meaningless slogans. No one clearly has a clue what to do. They have no idea what to do. They just, as the Tories did, as we've been doing for decades now, just throwing hundreds of millions, literally hundreds of millions of pounds at the problem, having no idea. And most of those so-called solutions or the potential solutions are in fact counterproductive. It just, every year we see more and more people coming, and we still have no idea what to do about it.
So what would you advocate? Do we need to have a stronger border force that simply turns boats back? Do we need to simply deport people who arrive illegally?
No, I think the solution, and the one main solution, has to be safe legal routes for asylum seekers. What that means, obviously we have seen that in a very, very limited way. On a very low scale. But for instance, we saw with Ukraine, of course, the terrible situation we've seen in Ukraine over the past 2 years or however long. Obviously we've not seen Ukrainians, luckily we've not seen Ukrainians drowning trying to escape the country. That's because we've actually sent flights.
Sure, and I think a lot of British people support that. But let me
Ukrainian families.
But let me ask you the question though. There are a lot of people who will say, well, what's wrong with France? What's wrong with other European countries? Why is it that people are wanting to leave France and come to Britain? Because surely France is a safe country.
Yeah, I mean, what was wrong with Ukraine's neighbouring countries? The point is that's a problem.
No, I'm not talking about Ukraine. I'm talking about...
No, but I am. The point is they were refugees, asylum seekers, fleeing war as well. The point is we actually sent planes there. I mean, all of Afghanistan, we think the whole of Afghanistan, neighbouring, well, obviously Pakistan neighbouring could take millions of Afghan asylum seekers. They do. So many other countries take many more. Germany takes many more than us, Spain, Greece, Italy.
And look at the problems that they all have. I mean, the issue that you have is that if you have a system that supports these legal routes, then you simply will, rather like if you build a motorway and you put 3 lanes on it, it'll get full to capacity. You build another lane, it'll get full to capacity. So we'll just end up with more people. I mean, how many more people can we accept into our nation on the basis that we've now got 8 million extra people that we've had who have arrived over the last 8 years, whether it's legal or illegal, and whether it's by migration or illegal immigration, or legal immigration. We have many millions of extra people in this country. It's too many.
Well, I mean, the answer to your question is how many more? Is as long as there's going to be war, there's going to be famine, we're going to be arming other countries, helping other countries invade other countries. Of course, we are basically creating asylum seekers and refugees. Then we have to, that's the least we can do in this situation. So I don't think, and many times people are...
The least we can do? Okay, well then what explains why we had so many people coming from Albania? I don't think we've invaded Albania recently.
Well, yes, we haven't done that, but of course these Albanians, many of them have recently been granted asylum as well. And so basically that means that because it has been proven their lives are in danger. It's not always necessarily, you know, the whole country has to be a war zone for someone's life to be in danger in a country.
But what I also don't understand is that there are plenty of ways in which somebody can come here legally. So people say, oh, you know, it's so expensive, whatever. You know, these people might be paying £2,000, £3,000, £5,000 to get on that boat in order to get here. Well, the last time I took an EasyJet flight, you know, it was like 50 quid. So, you know, you can fly around Europe for very little money. So there's obviously a reason why people are taking their lives in their own hands, and that's because the legal routes wouldn't necessarily allow them. And we've got a soft touch when it comes to these boats, and we just allow people to come, and then we put them up for years on end at our expense in hotels. It's horrendous.
I mean, I'm not sure if, you know, how much you know about the legal, but what legal routes? Studying? I mean, they're all supposed to become students or working. They're all supposed to get work permits, or, I mean, so that's what I'm saying. Their main reason. I mean, we're talking about disabled people, unwell people, children, women, pensioners. I mean, what sort of visas are? But
how many more people?
I really don't understand.
How many more people? How many more people should we have coming to this country?
No, that's what I'm saying. There is no limit. As long as humanity needs us, we need to be there. And we take on much, much fewer than so many other countries. Turkey, Pakistan, so many other countries. And like I mentioned, all the Europeans.
What would you say, then?
We're the 5th, 6th, 7th, whatever it is now.
Fine.
Largest economy in the world. And we're actually still counting. And literally we see people dying before our eyes, and we're saying how many more.
But what would you say to those people who say, we've got enough people into this country, we don't want any more?
Yes, well, I'm not. I mean, why do you say that? If we're talking about the weak infrastructure, we're talking about long GP queues, we're talking about no school places, we're talking about no accommodation. That's because the Tories spent almost £1 billion, £700 million on the doomed, you know, appalling, inhumane.
With all due respect, £1 billion would not solve our housing crisis, our hospital crisis. The fact is that we have 8 million extra people in this country, and there are a lot of people in this country who would say that is too many.
Yes, but how many hundreds of millions do we keep giving to France? Every single day. I mean, I bet just next week we're going to announce another 100 million because these few people died now. And how don't we know from the past 20, 30, 40 years that doesn't work? We just keep throwing money away because the government has no
But what doesn't work?
They just keep literally giving other governments all our money.
Yeah, but
I mean, literally, for
they're not giving
100 million we sent to Rwanda. I mean, what? So this our 3 home secretaries.
But how much money?
Days there.
How much money? How much money are we giving to lawyers like you to fight for cases for people who fight for years and years and years in order to stay in the country when, frankly, they should be thrown out?
Yes, exactly. And isn't that a disgrace? Why are we having to do this? Why do these people have to fight? The Ukrainians didn't have to do this. The Afghans who we flew over on planes didn't have years-long legal cases. That's the point. Why are these people having to fight long cases? That's the whole point.
Well, because they shouldn't be here, and the government's trying to get government's trying to remove them. And meanwhile, we've got lawyers who are obstructing the process. We've got people who are staying in hotels when they shouldn't be. I mean, in France, you know, they seem to stay in camps. Here, we put them up in hotels and we pay for everything, and then we stick them in our legal system. People like you come along, ka-ching, ka-ching, take a whole load of money and take the system for a ride.
Well, just treat them humanely and properly, and I would be out of a job. I mean, that's the day I really, really wish for. I wish you would put me out of this, and I wouldn't have to keep fighting for my clients. The point is, if 7 years later, 5 years later, after the government spending so much money on it, finally a judge says, yes, deporting this person would be inhumane, and our courts, you know, British courts...
But is it time to change the rules so that we can deport people?
Well, of course we do deport people. I mean, and especially this government recently has been deporting so many people. So
not enough.
We have seen recently. Well, I don't know. No, the point is, until we have a safe, legal,
we've still got hundreds. No. Why should we take more people? Why should we take more people into this country?
Because there's people dying, and we're a country, we're a civilized country. I mean, that's just like, you know,
yes, I understand.
My whole neighborhood on fire, and I say, why should I allow anyone into my house? Well, yes, of course, there's going to be less for me and my children, but that's what humans do.
Well, maybe humans don't want to. So what would you say? What would you say? What would you say to those who do not want to see more people come to this country?
I would say you have to do the right thing. Not many of us want to share anything.
But why should they do what you want them to do?
Who don't want to pay any tax. But no, sorry, you have to. You know, if you're making so much money from here, of course, you know, you have to pay tax. There's so much we do in life that we don't want to.
Sure, but we now have in this country. We now have the highest tax burden we have ever had in terms of how much people are paying, and yet we still don't have the schools and the hospitals and the housing and everything else. So we can't have a limitless number of people. I don't want to see anybody suffer anywhere, but the fact is that we cannot afford to take hundreds of thousands of people arriving into this country anymore.
The reason we cannot afford that is because our clueless governments, criminally incompetent governments, have spent billions first, for instance, on acquiring defective PPE, and then we spent billions on storing it. Then we spent billions on disposing of it because it wasn't fit for purpose. That's what our tax money is being paid on.
Yeah, but it's also being spent. Billions of pounds is being spent on putting people into hotels who have come here illegally. In my view, if you arrive here legally, then you should be deported immediately. Full stop.
No, but how is it when there's no legal route? I don't understand how you keep saying that.
Then don't come here. If there's no legal route, for example, if I want to go and live in New Zealand, then I have to fulfil certain criteria. And if I don't fulfil the criteria, I can't go.
Yes, but that's the thing. I'm not really sure what you're saying. But haven't we seen that for decades? Isn't that what we do? That's what the Refugee Convention is. That's what, people, when you're fleeing...
Maybe it's time to change it.
Change the fact that we should save people's lives.
You can't save everybody's lives.
Oh, well, at least as many as we can.
As
many as we can.
Yeah, but the thing is, you're saying
really we can't save people's lives, so let's just stop it.
You're saying
the fire brigade.
Let me have a word in. You are saying we, but there are a lot of people in this country who don't want to pay anymore. They don't want to do anymore. They would say, we're doing enough, we're doing as much as we can, we don't want to do any more, we have a limit.
I think in terms of paying more, if you're talking about the public, I think that's correct. They shouldn't pay. Like you said, we already pay horrendous levels of tax in this country. The point is our tax money is wasted. And that's why we have to hold our...
on lawyers like you.
Well, no. Well, please don't. If we just give people their rights in the first place, save people's lives, I wouldn't...
But how many people... Fine, then answer this question. How many people should be able to come to the UK before you say enough?
That would be according to the proportion, according to our size and our economy, considering the number of refugees in the world. Like I keep saying...
But why should we do that?
Because they're humans and they're dying and we need to save their lives. If
Don't save them.
See what happens. Children die drowning and people keep dying. And
there are people in this country.
Then I'm not really sure what to say.
There are people in this country, Shab, who are dying because they are malnourished, who are in poverty. We've got pensioners who are having their pension benefits taken away because... the government says we can't afford it. So I'm desperately sad that there are people all over the world who are in strife or otherwise, but we cannot be held accountable for the fact that the world population has gone from just over 2 billion back in the 1970s to 8 billion now. We cannot be held responsible and accountable and have to pay for all of these people. If they want to come here, fulfill the criteria, and if you don't, I'm sorry.
What you're saying in terms of the money we don't have and the government keeps saying we don't have enough money. Well, taxpayers have, just in the past few decades, the kind of things, we literally paid for a minister or an MP's, heating his stables in his house just to keep his horses warm. That was taxpayers' money. So that's what we're spending things on. And then when we say, children are dying in the time and we save their lives.
That is because we didn't want to admit what it is that we should be paying our politicians in order to do the job. So we hid it in expenses. Fine, I get it, and I get the whole expenses scandal. But frankly, that is just, you're picking these small amounts of money and you're avoiding answering the question, which is you seem to think that we should have open borders and safe routes for anybody in the world who wants to come to this country.
No, I don't know. That's the thing. You just keep asking for specific numbers. What am I supposed to say? Okay, we should take 57,200 people a year. What does that mean? I'm not sure what you want from me. The point is we have lots of money. We do have the infrastructure.
We have lots of money.
The country does, yes. We pay so much tax. Like you keep saying, and you're right, we're paying so much.
And we've got queues at A&E. We've got queues in our hospitals. We've got older people who are not being looked after properly because the care system's broken. We've got schools which are falling down that need to be rebuilt. We've got roads which are full of potholes. Isn't it about time that we spent that money that you say that we got so much of on the indigenous population? And in fact, that we looked at what has happened to this nation over the last however many years, the fact that we got 8 million extra people, and say, maybe we've taken in too many people.
No, to be honest, I think that's an awful phrase to use, indigenous. I don't know by that, am I indigenous? I don't know if I am. Does that mean you shouldn't spend anything on me even though I'm paying tax? I don't know what you mean by indigenous, really. But even in terms of, I think we need to be spending on humanity, and that's the point.
But what would you say to those people who say, I don't want to spend any more humanity, I'm spending enough?
I would say that firstly, if you are actually paying lots of tax and you can't see the return, then blame the government is the first thing. But then secondly,
they are blaming the government. The last one is being blamed for the fact that they just opened the doors, and this one is being blamed because they've done nothing about it.
No, you just keep coming back to that they don't want to. I don't think that's really an argument, is it? I don't want to pay taxes. I don't want to. What does that mean? Well, of course you have to. If you're living in a society, living in the world.
Yes, but it's also... So do you understand... Do you understand when reform starts to see a significant increase in its popularity, do you understand why they're becoming more popular?
The first thing to say is don't get me started on reform. And like we saw with Brexit,
I just did.
Everywhere. Well, yes, but that's what I mean. But the point is, we know the things they say and how they rile up people, and I'm not sure that's healthy or a good thing.
Is it riling up people, or is it just being honest about the fact that, for example, I don't think that a country of our size can deal with migration of 1.4 million people in a year, net migration of 600,000 or 700,000 people in a year. That's the legal stuff. I don't think we can absorb that many people into our nation in 1 year.
No, size? What do you mean? Geographical size? What size? Because our economy is large enough. And if we had people...
It's not, because people are now suffering. They've got less in their pockets. They're getting less public services. They've got less access to housing. All of the problems that people talk about today in our society can be highlighted by saying we have too many people in this country.
No, but we have very, very incompetent politicians who don't know what to do with the billions of pounds that they raise in tax. That's the problem. I don't think we have too many people. And, the 1% or 0.5% asylum seeker in a queue of 100 or 1,000 is the least of our worries. That's not really causing the problem.
But why should we, or what policy would you support? So you would say that the only way to stop the small boats is to have legitimate routes, so they just arrive, I don't know, on a plane?
Well, yes, of course, like we've done with Afghanistan to a very limited degree. We send a few flights, but mainly like we've done in the Ukraine. We've seen it happen. The Prime Minister at the time stood up and said...
we had a specific reason for doing so.
What was the specific reason? Was it greater than saving people's lives?
Yeah, but you can't save every life, sadly.
Well, at least let's try.
Why?
If you want
to, go and do it. But I think a lot of people in this country will say, enough already.
Well, I'm sure there's lots of things they would say enough already too. That's what, like I keep saying, lots of billions...
So why should they do it?
Because that's a democracy and that's humanity, and we like to keep saying,
so the democracy says, so when the democracy says, right, we've had enough now, we want to close our borders, will you support that?
Well, it depends what... No, but clearly they haven't...
So there you go. You're wanting it both ways, and that's the problem. That is the problem, that you are wanting it your way. You're saying that we all need to cough up. You're saying that we need to open our borders. You're saying that more people need to arrive. And you're saying that lawyers like yourself should be able to continue to challenge, cost. And I think that's why people are turning against you.
Two of those things I said completely opposite. Firstly, people need to cough up more. I'm saying, if anything, we need to lower taxes. And we pay the government enough already, and they just burn through our money. And second, in terms of lawyers, I've just said completely, I wish my role in this could be abolished. I wish people didn't need to come to me. I wish I had to find another job, because all these problems have been solved and people are no longer being treated inhumanely and unfairly.
But is it our job? You just criticised, just finally to you, you criticised and said, well, part of the reason that this exists is because we interfere. We're interfering around the world, saying it's our problem that people around the world are suffering. Is it really our job to pick it up? We're a small island.
I'm not sure what you mean, but if you're saying, many countries, we have supported our allies who have invaded other countries. So, yes, of course, like I said, that's the very, very least we can do. if you're actually supporting someone to set fire to a building, and then someone says, okay, at least can you save the children from here? Then you're like, well, nothing to do with me. I only provided the petrol. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's quite an inhumane and illogical approach, really. You have to be ready for those things.
Well, I think be aware and be ready for the illogical response then, because I think we're going to open the phone line. Shahab, thank you very much indeed for joining us. That's human rights lawyer Shahab Khan. I think he's told you what we need to know. I want to know, how will Keir Starmer smash the gangs? And in terms of the action, what action should the Prime Minister take? Because whatever he's doing now, it's clearly not working. 0344 499 1000, that's the number. We'll take your calls next here on Talk.
This is the first big poll we've seen. What is interesting about that poll is also the number of cabinet ministers who would lose their seats as a result. We would see people like Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, go. Couldn't happen to a nicer lady. Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, John Healey, Defence, Ed Miliband would be out as well. Energy Secretary Bridget Phillipson, Jonathan Reynolds. That should concentrate minds in the Labour Party, shouldn't it?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
28 minutes past 8 o'clock is the time. It's me, James Max, with you till 10. And we're talking about this story, when will Keir Starmer smash the gangs? Well, smashing the gangs isn't working. We've still seen the small boats arriving and nothing seems to be done. So I want to know from you, what action should the Prime Minister take? 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. 2 free lines into the building. Grab one of them. I'd like to hear what you have to say. This is with news that at least 3 migrants drowned. 40 others were rescued while trying to board an overcrowded boat on Sunday. We've seen a surge of small boat crossings over the last few days. You know, 1,500 people in the last 4 days just arriving illegally. And then you have the likes of Shahab Khan just saying, well, you know, we should have legal safe routes. Well, stop already. It's my view. What's yours? 0344 499 1000. Jill is in Cornwall. Jill, good evening.
Well, hello, James.
Hi, Jill.
I'm cooling down from listening to the gentleman you were just talking to.
Yes.
He's one of these solicitors that we as a country pay for in order for these illegal immigrants, not migrants, illegal immigrants to come into this country. You know, we should stop paying these solicitors. These, leave the EC... the European Court of
ECHR,
Human Rights.
yeah. But the thing is, you're not going to get somebody who is a trained and a qualified human rights lawyer, somebody who's been head of the criminal prosecution service, etc., as Prime Minister, who's going to lead that, because he's made a career out of this. I mean, do you think we've made a terrible mistake by voting Keir Starmer in as our Prime Minister?
Yes, I do. I think that people of this country thought that if they didn't vote for the Conservatives and they voted for Labour, I think a large majority of them thought that if they voted for Reform, that Reform would win the election. But, of course, it's not our particular type of voting machine. You know,
I think people will be much cuter to the voting system, and we're going to be speaking in a few minutes, actually, to Simon Danchuk about the latest polls, because I do find it fascinating that Labour might be reduced to 228 seats if there were to be a general election tomorrow. But I think it's issues like this where I think British people are... I don't know, you tell me, Jill. I think British people are extremely tolerant to people from different races, colours, religions, and we want to help. However, there has to be a limit on the number of people who arrive illegally or illegally, and there has to be a way to secure our borders.
Of course. I mean, we've got a navy. Well, we had a navy. You know, we had ships that could turn these boats around. Other countries have done it, James. Other countries have stopped, you know, people sort of floating across. If they were landing in France and Germany and they were awful countries, but France is supposedly a humane country.
I mean, what I find extraordinary, Jill, I agree, I think you make a good point there, but I think what I find is extraordinary is that, say, for example, if you happen to be going 26 in a 26 miles an hour in a 20-mile-an-hour limit, and a picture was taken of your car, they'd blooming well make sure that they found you. That's 60 quid that they want off you. Yeah. And if you don't pay it, then they'll continue until they get the money. Somebody is taking thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds illegally for these people in gangs, and they can't seem to find them. I find it absolutely astonishing.
Well, over a period of time, I have heard news reports that people are being arrested or questioned about illegal, people moving people illegally across the channel. These people that are arranging for the boats and everything else. I cannot believe that this country and the people who are running it, for goodness sake, are so stupid that they can't find out who these people are.
And I think that's the point, Jill. Thank you very much indeed for your call. It's 0344 499 1000. We'll take more of your calls on what action should the Prime Minister take on the basis that smashing the gangs just isn't working. So we'll take some more calls on that. 0344 499 1000. Plus, we'll be talking about that election poll where Labour could lose 200 seats if an election were held today. We'll be speaking to former Labour MP Simon Danchuk. That's next on Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
So the time is coming up to 8:35. It's me, James Max, with you till 10 here on Talk, where we've turned our attention to a subject which it's a recurring subject. When will Keir Starmer smash the gangs? Well, he said he was going to. Well, that isn't working. We've seen hundreds of people, 1,500 over the last 4 days or 5 days, arrive on small boats. So what action should the Prime Minister take to reverse that trend? 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. And you can send me a text if you like. 87222. Start your text with the word talk, and you can X me at talkTV at the James Max. And you heard from Sarab Khan, who was saying basically we should create legal routes and just allow anybody to turn up. Well, surely that's not the reason, and perhaps that explains why Nigel Farage would make sweeping gains if there was an election tomorrow, taking an extra 67 seats from Labour. According to a new poll, the Reform Party would take the tally to 72 seats, with Keir Starmer losing his majority, nearly 200 seats, in an electoral bloodbath, they say. The mega poll will put Reform as the third biggest party in the House of Commons. Well, let's find out why this could possibly be the case. Simon Dunchuk, former Labour MP, but I think he's probably switched his allegiances by now, but he joins me now. Simon, good evening.
Good evening. Nice to be with you, James.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I mean, the litany of mistakes made by this government, I know it's very easy to point the finger at the last lot and say, oh, well, they made all these mistakes, so we've got to raise tax to pay it off, and we had the black hole and the blah, blah, blah. But the choices they have taken over education and charging VAT on it, the choices that they have taken on taking away housing... heating allowances, rather, and fuel payments for those who desperately need it, as opposed to perhaps those who are higher taxpayers, is a decision they took. A decision that they've taken to change the inheritance tax system, undermining our whole farming system. The approach they've taken on the immigration, the housing, that they just say, oh, yeah, we're going to build hundreds of thousands of houses up and down the country and build all over fields, and we don't really care. The NHS, no action taken. I mean, you name it, this government has taken... They've done it to themselves, haven't they?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think Keir Starmer is probably the worst Prime Minister in my living memory. I can't think of anybody who's done worse by the country in such a short length of time.
Jim Callaghan?
Sir?
Jim Callaghan?
Jim Callaghan, yeah. He might just be a bit before my time, but...
OK, well, how about Gordon Brown, where his first 100 days were excellent, and then after that he showed his true colours, and he started tinkering with everything, and he made a complete and utter mess of it?
Well, we can go through each Prime Minister, but my view is that Starmer's been making a lot of significant mistakes in a very short time. I mean, the opinion polls show that. I think he's become the most unpopular Prime Minister in a shorter length of time than any other previous Prime Minister. You've gone through the litany of mistakes that have already been made that are exceptionally unpopular with the general public. I'm not surprised by this latest opinion poll, and it's significant because it's a survey of 11,000 people. Most opinion polls are of around 1,100 people, so it's very detailed, and it quite clearly shows that Labour are going to get decimated if there's a general election anytime soon.
Which is probably the reason that they won't hold one. Quite interesting. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner, Energy Secretary Ed Miliband and Home Secretary Yvette Cooper would lose their seats to Reform. And I'm not surprised. I think voters are becoming more cute to our electoral system. And I think that the next election, come the next election, they will be looking at those polls and people will vote tactically. And I think they will vote tactically to get whoever is in power out.
Yes, exactly. And that's what we saw some of at the last general election. So there's a lot of fluidity in how the electorate will now vote. A lot stayed at home in the general election earlier this year and didn't come out to vote. It was one of the lowest turnouts in any general election in a very long time. And you've got to bear in mind that Labour were elected on about just over 30% of the voters' votes cast. But really, they only got 20% of the total electorate's vote. So there's very shallow support, if any at all, for Labour to be actually in government.
And isn't part of the problem that Labour have faced is that people may have agreed with the headlines. So, for example, I don't think you're going to find many people arguing with grow the economy. But when you see all of the economic decisions that they have taken, there isn't a single one that points the finger towards an economy that will grow.
That's exactly right. And the ONS, Office of National Statistics, figures come out recently showing that there was absolutely no growth in July, August or September. And some of that is because as soon as they took power, they killed confidence in the economy. They talked the economy down. Starmer and Reeves talked the economy down. And then it's been followed by a budget that's actually killing jobs. The national insurance hike is going to stop employers from employing people. And so the growth won't be here anytime soon under this government, and people can spot this. But you also mentioned, you've been discussing illegal immigration, quite rightly. People feel very strongly about that. Starmer said he had a plan to sort it out, and he said he would reduce and eradicate the spending on hotels for illegal immigrants. He's actually increasing the budget for hotel stays for illegal immigrants, and he has no plan at all for reducing the number of illegal immigrants coming by small boats. People can see that, and it's being reflected in these opinion polls. And the other point I'd make here is this is a step towards a reform government. I could quite feasibly see at the next general election Nigel Farage winning that general election and coming to power and coming into Downing Street.
What would you say to those who argue and say, if you stop immigration or if you allow, whether it's the likes of reform or indeed some of the rhetoric which is there, then it allows, under the cover or otherwise, people to be racist or otherwise. What is the right or the rational argument for talking about immigration in a way that is not seen or is not, you know, racist?
Well, I think Reform UK, and I think Nigel and Richard Tice and others speak about illegal immigration in a sensible manner. People on the left try and portray them as being far right or extreme, or as you were pointing out, as racist. This is just complete nonsense, just like people on the left tried to portray Boris Johnson as being some right-winger. He's the most moderate Prime Minister that Britain's had in a long time. That's the reality of it. And it doesn't stick. People don't buy into this argument. The label that the left tried to stick on to people like Nigel.
And do you think that it is perfect? I mean, I take the view that it's perfectly legitimate to talk about numbers, if you like. So you've had a population in this country who have been paying for various different services or essential services, and successive governments over the last 20 years have allowed, in my view, too many people to come to this country, whether legally or illegally. We haven't pursued those who have overstayed their welcome. We haven't had systems in place, which then means that there is pressure on housing. We haven't put in extra spending on hospitals and schools and infrastructure, which means that we can no longer cope with the huge numbers who have been coming in. And whilst we have, you know, responsibility or otherwise to others, and we should have compassion towards those who are genuinely in need, it doesn't mean that we can offer that to all and sundry.
No, absolutely. The infrastructure that we have in this country, whether it's hospitals, schools, roads, the underground tube network, whatever it is creaking at the seams because we've let far too many people into this country, whether it's legally or illegally. We've let far too many people in, and some who can just bring their relatives as well. Students, by all means, come in, you know, part of the university.
But when people actually understand what the rules are and who has been, you know, a connected person and what, you know, legal rights, if you like, right to a family life and how big then, you know, that family can extend, it is extraordinary in terms of what that has allowed. I'm assuming, though, that one can't necessarily deal with the past, you have to deal with the future, because if you deal with the past and you start saying, right, well, you're no longer here, show your papers, that ends up in a very, very ugly place.
Well, I think that's right to an extent, but there are still a lot of people here that are here illegally, who don't have the right to remain here and who should be removed. And I think they should be removed. And I think Reform have got this right. We have to come out to the European Convention on Human Rights. That's a first, so that lawyers like the one that you had on earlier can stop milking the legal system for every penny that they can get. so that we can remove people more easily. We have to turn the boats around, as they've done in Australia, use the Navy or the Border Force to be able to turn the boats around, stop illegal immigrants coming into this country. A definite step has to be taken on that. And that's why Reform are continually increasing their popularity. The two other mainstream parties, Labour and the Conservatives, have proven themselves to be the friends of illegal immigrants. And that's not what the public in Britain want now.
OK, so just finally to you, in terms of these polls, is this just a rogue poll, or do you think that we now see a complete change in the, I don't know, British political environment in the next year or so?
Yeah, definitely. It's a step change. There's a revolution going on in British politics, and what we're seeing is a growth in Reform, a very popular party, and the decline, certainly, of Labour. There's no doubt about that.
Well, then there we go. Funnily enough, I suppose you probably would say that, having stood for Reform, you would probably advocate them to the hills, and other views are available. But former Labour MP, now Reform candidate, I suppose, or former Reform candidate, Simon Danczuk, thank you very much indeed for joining me here on Talk. So you've heard what Simon has to say. The phone lines are open. I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you about this immigration story. Smashing the gangs isn't working. That's what Keir Starmer said he would do, and he hasn't. So what action should the Prime Minister take? 0344 499 1000. We'll take your calls on that, and also we'll be speaking to the travel expert Simon Calder. He joins us next on Talk.
caused him heartache. That really hurt him, I think, in the end, in not getting reelected and allowing Ronald Reagan to come in as a new, fresh voice of hope. So, he only served one term. He also, though unfortunately, came in at a time because of the Iranian situation. There was an energy crisis, which led to gas lines. You had people lining up for miles.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
It's 11 minutes to 9 o'clock. It's me, James Max, with you till 10 here on Talk, where we are talking about Keir Starmer. He said he would smash the gangs. It's not working, is it? What action should the Prime Minister take is what I'm asking. 0344 499 1000. Barry has been in touch and says, James, I spent the whole day with my German friends in London and mass immigration is causing them, Germany, huge problems. 300,000 a year and increasing. They want it stopped and reversed. This argument of we take less than other countries doesn't hold any water with me, says Barry in London. Thank you for that. We'll take some more of your messages on the socials at talkTV, at the James Max, and 87222 is the number to send your text to. Start your text with the word talk. Meanwhile, New Year travel chaos expected. Heavy snow and strong winds to batter the UK. And we've already heard that in Edinburgh, the Hogmanay events, including the famous street party, has been cancelled as storm chaos brings New Year misery. Well, who better to update us on whether we've really got travel chaos and whether we should just all stay at home and listen to Talk? It's Simon Calder. Simon, very good evening to you. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I think probably staying at home listening or watching Talk is most definitely the way to proceed over the next 48 hours or so. If you happen to be in Scotland, you're probably already experiencing heavy rain, maybe at higher altitudes some snow. You are the subject tomorrow all day long of an amber weather warning in the centre of Scotland, as it were, roughly from Perth up to Inverness, and that is going to be really treacherous and difficult to travel north-south. But anywhere in the UK, apart from the southern parts of Northern Ireland and an area around the Wash, kind of Norfolk, Lincolnshire, South Yorkshire, you're in line for a weather warning about rain, heavy winds, whatever it is, in the next 2 days. So you are going to have some pretty brutal weather. It's going to be horrible to drive, and so you might think, oh, well, that's all right, I'll take the train instead. Well, already we've got speed limits in place, restricted speed, longer journeys in Scotland between Glasgow and Edinburgh and Aberdeen, and also north and west of Inverness. And I've just actually been at Euston Station in London, the hub for the West Coast main line to the West Midlands, North West England, North Wales, Southern Scotland. That was incredibly busy because people are trying to make their journeys tonight because guess what? Strikes resume tomorrow. We're going to see the vast majority of trains on that very important line wiped out.
I just threw in a because I thought that all this money that the government had thrown at our various transport workers, either directly or indirectly, I thought we'd seen an end to the strikes. But no, you shovel money in their direction. They still blooming go on strike. Why are they striking now?
OK, well, these are specifically Avanti West Coast train managers. There's about 300 of them, and they are unhappy about how much they earn for working overtime on rest days. They've been offered for an 8-hour shift £250 during the week, £300 at weekends. They say that is not enough. Indeed, the senior managers who will be acting as train managers tomorrow, which is why you're going to get maybe 1 in 4 trains running on the Avanti West Coast network, they say those managers get more cash for that. And I think there's also a little bit of envy because the women and men who are driving the trains are getting for every rest day they work a flat £600. And I think the idea is, well, you know, the government's got a bottomless pit of money, obviously, and therefore let's go after a bit more. And
it's nice work if you can get it, Simon. I mean, I don't know. I think we just all got to change jobs.
Well, I can sort of see that, but it's always been the case that the railways have been an area in which the unions have been powerful. I think they're probably getting more and more powerful. But exactly as you say, Labour came in, almost 6 months ago and said, first thing we're going to do is end these strikes, which if you say to the unions, how much do you want again? And you give them that, then that's not going to be the trickiest negotiation in history. And of course, there's so many underlying problems. Yesterday, for instance, we had hundreds of trains cancelled on the northern network because guards don't have to work west of the Pennines on a Sunday if they don't feel like it. And quite understandably, lots of them said,
sorry to
right on,
interrupt,
we
but
go to work.
have you got any good news for us on the travel front?
Yes, I have. So we have now seen the reopening of London Paddington Station. So if you were lucky enough to be going to Devon, Cornwall, Bristol, South Wales tomorrow, then you're going to be able to travel there fairly normally and well. London St Pancras also reopened, so that means the line from Sheffield, Derby, Nottingham, Leicester to London is open again. And actually, things aren't working too badly at the moment. Certainly, you're better off on a train than you have been over the past few days on a plane. We have seen almost 500 flight cancellations due to fog, or rather the fact that our biggest airports, Heathrow and Gatwick, can't cope when it gets foggy. Not because you can't land a plane, because you can, but you have to slow things down. Everything goes into slow motion, and if that means that you have to allow more than 80 seconds between arriving planes at Heathrow Airport, well, so be it. It just means you're going to have to start cancelling flights. So that's been pretty grim for 75,000 passengers who've had their planes cancelled. Hopefully they'll get where they need before tomorrow night.
Simon Calder from The Independent and indeed travel expert, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on Talk. It's much appreciated. So you have been warned, New Year travel chaos ahead, plus those Edinburgh Hogmanay events cancelled because of the weather. So, smashing the gangs though, let's get back to that. What action should the Prime Minister take is what I'm asking you. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. Claire is in the Wirral. Claire, good evening.
Good evening, James. I hope you're well.
I think I'm reasonably well, although the voice is a little bit husky today.
Oh, I think mine is as well.
Oh, well, we can sympathise together.
Yeah, we'll do that. And also sympathise together about, that human rights lawyer.
Well, I tried my best.
I mean, they're just lining their pockets.
In an ideal world, nobody suffers. Nobody has any health conditions. Nobody has any money issues or worry issues or any kind of, born with any health problems or disabilities, whatever. The world is an unfair place. And, of course, we have responsibilities in this nation. We are relatively wealthy, etc. But it doesn't mean that we should open the floodgates and allow any Tom, Dick or Harriet to turn up. And it doesn't mean that we should have, people staying in hotels because they arrive on a small boat.
Exactly, and he just wants to line his pockets. He's talking about people dying. They're not dying. They're economic migrants. Probably over 90% of them are. And I'll tell you what, James, if we all got on a dinghy and we went to their shores and we actually affected their country the way that they are affecting us, I am sure they'd probably get the guns out.
How many people
have welcoming arms?
How many, whether it's legal or illegal, how many legal migrants should we have in a year net, do you think?
I don't legal. I think we should do as Reform say. I think we've got enough. We don't want any. I think we should sort of.
Because I know there are some people who think that we shouldn't have any migration at all, which I think is impractical. We need to make sure that economically, there are reasons why people need to come to this country. There are reasons why people will leave this country. And I think, just putting the brakes on it. I mean, David Cameron said, the tens of thousands. Even Tony Blair said the tens of thousands, which is what you can probably deal with. Because people who come to live in this country, they need to assimilate. They need to learn the language. They need to be looked after. They need to have the, services they need. But we can't afford, just hundreds of thousands of people just arriving.
Yeah, I think the thing is, though, James, haven't we got enough? I mean, if you want a workforce, haven't we got enough? But, the people...
Well, accordingly not, because nobody wants to work anymore, because we've got all these youths who think that they don't have to. They'll put their hand up and say, oh, no, we've got some kind of mental health issue or something else, or, I can't possibly get out of bed.
I mean, that's another matter, isn't it? That sort of would have to be sorted in another way, employment-wise.
Well, we just have a lot more problems to solve, don't we, Claire?
Yeah. But I do think that, people will have... The only way it's going to stop is because there is a terrorism threat that is into this country.
Well, I think that's another whole stream of conversation. Claire, thank you very much indeed for that. We must move on, however. And still to come, the chairman of the Republicans Overseas UK, Greg Swenson. He'll be with us discussing the legacy of Jimmy Carter, the former US president, who passed away yesterday, aged 100. Plus, we continue to take more of your calls as we discuss what the action that the Prime Minister should take is in order to deal with immigration. 0344 499 1000 is the number.
I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
I have just returned from Buckingham Palace to form the next government of this great nation.
Take a look at what happened.
I immediately knew it was very serious, that we were under attack.
Time has come, and this surely is England's time. Williams, who scores, and Spain lead. A shot from distance is in. It is Cole Palmer. Low ball in, or far ball, slides it in.
An absolute killer of a goal.
I agree with the process, but I don't think the violence was anywhere near necessary.
No, I mean, I don't think anyone, Nigel, would ever think that the violence was the answer at all.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me.
If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs. The people that came in, they're eating the cats.
Liberal left couldn't understand that this man could be anything other than the great newsreader, man of integrity.
Is it possible in any way, shape or form that Keir Starmer didn't know?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
And a very good evening to you. Yes, it's me, James Max, with you till 10 here on Talk, when Petri Hoskin will be here to keep you entertained into the later hours of the evening. And as I mentioned to you, yes, I will be in for Kevin O'Sullivan this week, 7 till 10. So hopefully you'll keep joining us here on Talk and join in the conversation. Yes, we will continue to take your calls on Keir Starmer smashing the gangs. Well, he said that we must smash the gangs, but what action should the Prime Minister take? We'll take some more of your calls on that. 0344 499 1000. Plus, I want to turn our attention also to what should be done to encourage overseas investment into the UK. The reason that I ask is that Elon Musk has said, and maybe you might say, well, what's he got to do with it? But Elon Musk has said the UK is not a great place to invest in Keir Starmer's Britain. So what should be done to encourage overseas investment into our country? 0344 499 1000. So there you go. All sorts of things to talk about, and we've cleared a couple of free lines into the building. So if you try now, 0344 499 1000, you will get through, and we will try and get as many of your calls on between now and 10 o'clock. Yes, you can talk about Keir Starmer and smashing those gangs, and also you can talk about perhaps what we need to do to make our country more investable. Making people come to the country to invest is a good plan, is it not? 0344 499 1000. I'll come back with my views on that in a moment. However, the 39th US president and recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize passes away at his home in Georgia. That's Jimmy Carter. He was 100 years old. Democrats served one term between 1977 and 1981, longest life of anyone to hold the office. Chip Carter, the son of the former president. Why did these people give their children such terrible names? Anyway, Chip Carter, the son of the former president, said his father died around 3:40 local time, where he had been receiving hospice care. Always sad to see somebody depart, but maybe somebody of this significance, we need to find out exactly, well, what was his impact? Chairman of the Republicans overseas, UK, Greg Swenson, joins me now. Greg, very good evening to you.
Great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks very much indeed for joining us. So, I'd sort of look at my history books, and I remember my views of Jimmy Carter being one of the most useless US presidents of all time. And suddenly here we got, and everybody from all sides seems saying what a wonderful man he was. I'm assuming he did his great work after he was president.
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, look, he was a failed president. There's no doubt about that. And until Joe Biden arrived, he probably would have been considered the worst president in post-war history. But good for Jimmy Carter, because finally Joe Biden came around and took the prize. But I do think that there's this perception that he was a failed president, but he was a great post-White House citizen, and there's definitely merit to that. I don't want to diminish the fact that he was a charitable man. He was very much a Christian man, a family man. So I think he did a lot of good in the world, but it might be a little bit overdone, because he also made some mistakes and overdid it with his diplomacy, or so-called diplomacy, which he had no official right to do when he was interrupting the Clinton administration's movements in North Korea, and of course George H.W. Bush's movements in Kuwait and Iraq in 1991. So look, I mean, he's not perfect. Was he a bad guy? No, he was a good man. He served his country. He joined the Navy. He was a cadet at the U.S. Naval Academy at Annapolis. He joined in 1942 at the kind of the peak of World War II. I mean, he is a patriot, and I don't doubt that. But I do think a lot of this, this kind of historical worship of his post-White House years is a little bit much. Again, he just died yesterday. I don't mean to be, I don't mean to dance on anyone's grave. And so I think it's important to remember that he was a good man. He was not a great president. And those were very difficult times in America, as you experienced here in the UK. They
certainly were. And we certainly remember, of course, Ronald Reagan being swept to power in 1981. And indeed, that special relationship that developed between Margaret Thatcher and indeed Ronald Reagan during those times. And arguably, it's the reforms that Reagan made in the US and Margaret Thatcher made here in the UK that put both countries back on the map. And here we are, and we have an outgoing failed president in the form of Joe Biden in the US, and we have, in terms of Keir Starmer, arguably the most useless prime minister we've had in generations, and that's saying something given what we've had over the last 14 years here in the UK. I mean, it is astonishing that history does repeat itself, and it appears to have repeated itself rather unpleasantly here in the UK and in the US.
Yeah, it's amazing. There's such optimism right now in the US, and I think part of that is because of the failed Biden presidency, and that's very similar to the Carter presidency. Comparing the two, I think is unfair to Jimmy Carter, because Joe Biden created most of his problems, right? He created the inflation. He opened the border. A lot of Jimmy Carter's problems were inherited from Nixon and Gerald Ford. So, he didn't handle it well. He obviously didn't handle it well because he lost, all but 6 states in his reelection campaign in 1980. So obviously the people, the voters thought he was a complete failure. But a lot of his problems, were not necessarily his fault, as opposed to Biden, who inherited a really great situation. Even with COVID, that the crisis was over, the economy had recovered, and Biden did his best to wreck the country. So I would definitely rank Biden as the worst president in post-war history, not Jimmy Carter. And again, Jimmy Carter was a good man.
So rather like John Major, who was maligned as a prime minister at the time, but history has been kinder to him in terms of what he did and what he achieved, and indeed what he did post being in office. It would appear as if that's very similar to the way that perhaps America and Americans look at Jimmy Carter.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, the perception is very great about Jimmy Carter. He, Habitat for Humanity, other charitable causes he endorsed and worked on. I mean, he was a very selfless person. I agree with that for sure. And he did great things for eradicating disease in Africa. So look, there's no doubt that his post-White House years were better than his White House years, because that was a very difficult time, and he was not a very good president. But he wasn't perfect. I mean, he definitely overstepped his boundaries with what he did when Bill Clinton was president, when Carter went to North Korea and basically cut a deal with Kim Jong-il and basically accelerated the ability of North Korea to have nuclear weapons. He did the same thing with the first Iraq War, the Desert Storm in 1991, where he totally overstepped his bounds and encouraged some of our allies to basically drop out of the coalition. So look, he might have overdone it. It doesn't make him a bad guy. Maybe his intentions were good. He was very pro-Arafat. He was very pro-Hamas. I think he lost a lot of friends in America when he took that stand in the last 20 years, being very much against Israel. So, I mean, again, he's not perfect, but compared to Joe Biden, he was fantastic.
Let me ask you about another story which we're thinking about here. Elon Musk has said that very few businesses want to invest in Sir Keir Starmer's Britain. Yeah. The tech tycoon blamed the current administration for putting off wealth creators in remarks that would come as a blow to the Prime Minister. I mean, I see what he's saying. It sort of flows contrary to some comments coming from the likes of Blackstone, from BlackRock, and indeed Meta, Alphabet, KKR, various other firms who have all said, well, actually, the UK is looking quite good. But it's probably not as good as it could be. And certainly Keir Starmer seems to be doing everything with the tax system to make it perhaps uneconomic. Should we be listening to Elon Musk, who seems to want to put and interfere with the UK's political system?
Well, I think he's trying to do something positive and say something positive. In other words, you need to embrace the private sector and embrace the idea that wealth creation is good and free markets are good. And look, there's a reason people want to start businesses in America, and they don't want to do that here in the UK because there's a hostility to the private sector here in the United Kingdom, similar to what we've had for 4 years with Biden. But that's coming to an end on January 20th. It's already come to an end, actually, in terms of the optimism in the U.S. right now. So, yeah, there's some merit to what Elon is saying. Of course, the big corporates are going to have to, be polite and say the right things because they're doing business here in the U.K. But, look, it's pretty clear that hostility to the private sector, hostility to job creators is never good.
And these comments, by the way, have come in response to a letter from the Scottish politicians. They want Tesla, of course, one of the companies that Mr. Musk owns, to open a new gigafactory in the country. And he's basically saying, why would I do that?
Exactly. I mean, he's got a good point, right? Why would you want to open a business in a place where the government is hostile to private business and to the private sector, whether it's through taxation or more likely over-regulation? And this goes back to, you mentioned it before about Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan. The deregulation and tax reform is critical for business investment and wage growth. And we haven't seen that in the U.S. in 4 years. I think we'll start seeing it in the next few years. I think Elon Musk has a view, and I totally agree with his view.
Now, We in this country very often talk about the special relationship, which refers to the relationship between the United Kingdom and the US. In the US, whenever I worked in the US, nobody has a Scooby-Doo. Nobody has an idea what it means, and they've never even heard of it. However, it matters over here. What's the UK got to do in order to at least feel as if that special relationship is something that is going to reap benefits?
So, great question. I do think the special relationship is long-term. So there's going to be speed bumps. Joe Biden was not friendly to the UK, not a friend of the UK. I think Trump very much was in his first term and will be again. Yes, there are different political parties involved now, but the most important thing to remember is, you know, we are the biggest trading partners, 1 and 2. We are the biggest foreign direct investors in each other's countries. So I think there's so much upside here. It's important to maintain the relationship. Do I think Trump will be better? Of course I do. Like, he is much more positive about the UK. So I'm not worried about the relationship long term. Yeah, it might be more important to the UK just given the scale of both countries. But I do think it's important to the U.S. It's the #1 security partner, the #1 defense partner, and again, #1 and #2 in trade and foreign direct investment. So I'm optimistic. It would be better if the Labor government embraced that and opened up to the idea of embracing some of President Trump's policies, the policies of free markets, free people, get away from over-regulation, get away from over-taxation. They're not doing it right now. If they were smart, they would embrace it.
Yeah, problem is I don't think they are. But there we are. Greg Swenson, Chairman of the Republicans Overseas UK. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening here on Talk and giving us your perspective, not only on the passing of Jimmy Carter at the age of 100 and perhaps his legacy, but also talking about Elon Musk. Very few businesses want to invest in Sir Keir Starmer's Britain, he said. Well, the question is, what should be done to encourage overseas investment into the UK? I'll give you my views on that in a moment. Plus, what action should the Prime Minister here in the UK take about, well, smashing those gangs, stopping those boats? It's very clear that his current policies aren't working, so what action should he take? 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. We'll take more of your calls next here on Talk.
heartache. That really hurt him, I think, in the end, in not getting reelected and allowing Ronald Reagan to come in as a new, fresh voice of hope. So, he only served one term. He also, though unfortunately, came in at a time because of the Iranian situation. There was an energy crisis, which led to gas lines. You had people lining up for miles.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
20 minutes past 9, it's me, James Manx, with you till 10 here on Talk. So talking to you about, well, a couple of things actually. Elon Musk, he said that very few businesses want to invest in Sir Keir Starmer's Britain. He's got a point. I think there will be investment from overseas because they will take the longer term view and they'll actually be looking at those opinion polls thinking, well, if we make an investment now, then we might be better placed for when he gets the boot. In my view, we need to reduce regulation. We need to reduce tax. We need to encourage investment, i.e. people taking risk, and make sure that people can be rewarded for taking risk, and also make sure that people have got more money in their pockets to do what they like with it, and to stop thinking that the state has to take responsibility for everything. Oh, breakfast clubs. Oh, yeah, we can't have a hungry child go to school. Well, for those who desperately need it, sure, but just spending 300 million quid we haven't got to make sure that every child has breakfast at school, it's like, no. When did the responsibility of feeding your child move from the personal responsibility to the state? It's like, if you really want to improve the educational system, sure, make sure there's a proper lunch in there, by all means. Where's the focus on reducing class sizes? Where's the focus on making sure that school buildings and facilities are appropriate? And, all the other stuff that we need to do. And do we really need to decolonialise our... it's like, no. But then also, getting back to this point on investment, people who invest money, they're taking risk. They need to know that they will be rewarded should that risk pay off, and that all the profits or otherwise aren't just going to be taken away. Because otherwise, if you tax people too much, they're just not going to bother. In the same way that if you are paying too much tax, why would you bother getting out of bed and going to work if you're not going to get paid properly for the job that you do? It's bonkers. Anyway, I've got a couple of free lines into the building. Do give me a call on that. What should be done to encourage overseas investment into the UK? I've given you my ideas, but what are yours? Plus, also, smashing the gangs. That's what Keir Starmer keeps saying. We're going to smash the gangs. Well, it's not working. Do something, Prime Minister. Anything. What action should he take? 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. Spike is in Gosport. Hello, Spike.
Yeah. Hello, James. I trust you have recovered from your chat with a lawyer.
Well, I mean, frankly, I think a few doses of the smelling salts required there.
Yeah, I think there was. I was quite impressed with your demeanour through the whole incident.
Well, I thought that I'd let him just say what he thought and press where appropriate and open the phone lines and allow people like you, Spike, to have your say.
Well, he just dug a hole and got himself into it. Whatever you asked him, the answer invariably involved trying to make you feel guilty over somebody dying in the channel, and, of course, it was going to cost money whatever way it went. It was always money and that sort of thing. Anyway, how to stop them? We got two carriers in Portsmouth Harbour idle.
Yeah, apparently they're not really working because the previous government messed that up.
They did, didn't they? Yeah, they built the modules down south and then shipped the modules up north to be assembled in the Rosyth dockyard, which, of course, was Gordon Brown's constituent. But that's another story. Anyway,
you know what? I heard a lovely story about what Gordon Brown liked to drink alcoholic beverage-wise. He had a very simple and single choice. You know what he drank?
No.
It's reported that the only alcoholic drink that he had in his fridge, champagne.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was a champagne Labour, right, wasn't he?
Tells you all you need to know.
And all he used to eat off the cuff was bananas as well. He loved his bananas.
I think he liked a Kit Kat as well. Which I have to say, that's something I do quite like a Kit Kat.
But that's not going to stop the migrants, is it?
No.
Well, as I was going to say, we've got these two carriers. Get them out. Send a marine notice out to all shipping on the in the territorial waters of the English Channel and say these two carriers are going to do high-speed trials up and down. If you get in the way, tough. Like me say, the wash from.
I'm not sure necessarily that that's going to help, Spike. I mean, it's an interesting idea, but I just wonder whether. I mean, I still don't understand why. You know, you've got these camps, which the French seem to be unable to remove those camps. If you go to any European city, you will see encampments of people who are just, I don't know, they're just, you know, in these, you know, temporary makeshift. I mean, you know, we're putting people in hotels, and they've got people who are just, like, in these temporary camps. I just find it astonishing that it's allowed.
And I suspect they're sort of going from one campsite to the next, working their way towards the channel. But
yes,
I guess a thought for you. You know, you use the expression common sense a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how it came about?
Well, I don't know. You tell me.
When it was realised that only the common people have got it.
Oh, I see. Am I a common person?
You know, what can I say?
I don't know. Well, I'd like to think...
I like to think you're down with us, put it that way.
Well, I would like to think that my eyes are open, my ears are open, and also I apply a good dose of common sense to whatever we say on the station. We are the home of common sense.
Yeah, that's right. I agree with you. I was just saying, but it seems that some people, they sort of get up that greasy pole a bit and they seem to metamorph this into something else, you know. But anyway, I'm rabbiting on.
Oh, it's all right.
Yeah.
Well, Spike, thank you very much indeed for rabbiting. It's much appreciated. There we go. That's Spike and Gosport. Do you want to join the conversation? 0344 499 1000. Let's go to Scott, who's in the Royal County of Essex. Scott, good evening.
Hello, everything's going well with you, James?
Yeah, very good, thank you. So, tell me, migrants, what do we do about it? Smashing the gangs, nice idea from the Prime Minister. He seems to have taken no action whatsoever.
Well, the human rights lawyer you had on earlier proved time and time again they only have a one-trick pony.
Mm-hmm.
Let them in, let them in, let them in. They don't ever want to send them back.
No.
And there's no jurisdiction or any method they will accept that someone should be sent back. No terrorists, no murderers, no rapists, no molesters of children, no one.
And then, of course, there is the
street.
And then there is also the cost of administering all this, because as soon as you open up these, quote, safe routes, funnily enough, there are plenty of people around the world who would much rather come and live here. I mean, you know, it's a nice place to come and live. I understand. And I think that we should do something. I don't think that we should do absolutely nothing. If it wasn't for immigration, I wouldn't be here. You know, 3 or 4 generations ago, this nation was generous towards those people who needed help. But, you know, that help, 10,000, 20,000 a year, sure, fine.
Well, there's an easy way we can cut the cost quite drastically.
Oh, yeah.
Stop using all of these bleeding 4-star hotels. Let's open up the Pontins and the Butlins. I'm sure they could do with the money.
Oh, to be fair, when none of us have got any money left, that's where we're all going on holiday, Scott.
No, we won't be able to afford it because the people in the boats will have everything sewn up for them. There'll be nothing left for anyone else.
So in terms of sensible action that the Prime Minister could take, I mean, you know, we heard the previous one who said stop the boats. He said it, but he didn't do it.
Yeah, there's a problem with that because Germany at the moment is having an election, and if it goes the way people think, Germany might want to get out of the ECHR so they can start deporting the problems they have. If they do that, all that problem's going to jump into France. France is going to jump out of that kettle very quickly, and that means they're going to deport them all here. They won't go down to Spain, Italy or Greece, I can bet.
Well,
Which means the only way we can stop them all coming here is if we get out of the ECHR before France.
Yeah. No, well, I can see that, and maybe removing ourselves from the ECHR is the way forward. Whether or not that will produce, because you've still got to have a legal framework in place, and so whether you have the ECHR or not, you've still got to have a legal framework in place, and that's something that they need to do. And the thing is that Keir Starmer is never, as a human rights lawyer by training, he's never going to have the kind of jurisdiction that you say that you would like to see.
Which means the only option we have is a full Europe-wide option, but not the European Union, Council, courtroom or whatever, but the countries of Europe actually saying, right, yeah, you're welcome in this country. But if you disrespect this country, terrorism, murder, rape, children, trafficking people, owning slaves, you will be sent back to your country of origin. There will be no breach of human rights because you called upon it yourself. And if you're going to be injured by being sent back home, maybe you shouldn't have done the crime here in the first place.
Well, you see, I think that's a very good point, which is that if you have broken a human right of somebody else by your actions, then you shouldn't necessarily have the same human rights that somebody who does adhere to it should have. And then, to my mind, that would be the common sense application of that. Scott, I'm sure we could talk some more, but we can't because we're out of time on that one. So thank you very much indeed for your call. We will take more of your calls, though, if you would like to have your say. Smashing the gangs. Well, it's not working, so I'm asking you what action should the Prime Minister take. But also, Elon Musk has said that very few businesses want to invest in Sir Keir Starmer's Britain. So what should be done to encourage overseas investment into the country? Do you think that we should make efforts to try and bring money in from overseas to invest in our country? I would say yes. And I'll give you some more reasons as to why in a moment. But I'd like to have your calls on it as well. We've got a few free lines into the building now. We've done some calls. So it's 0344 499 1000 to have your say.
On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
So, join the conversation, please. It's me, James Max, here on Talk, and I'm with you till 10. So, smashing the gangs? Well, it's not working, is it? So if something isn't working, don't you try something else? So what should the Prime Minister do? What action should he take to stop those boats arriving? We've had 1,500 people arrive, more deaths over the last couple of days, more small boats arriving. The only thing that will stop is just more bad weather, which maybe, you know, blessed be it, we've got more bad weather on the way, and perhaps that will stop those small boats coming. Anyway, you tell me, 0344 499 1000 on that. And also, Very few businesses want to invest in Sir Keir Starmer's Britain. What should be done to encourage overseas investment into the UK? I think we've got to get rid of stamp duty. It's too high. We've got to make tax transparent structures easier. We've got to reward risk. So if you take risk and employ people, then you should be able to get benefits for it. And we shouldn't be worried about lining people's pockets if, as a response to something, if somebody makes money, makes returns, we shouldn't just, tax it all and say, oh, yes, we'll have that, please. No. We should be rewarding people for hard work, whether it's an individual or, indeed, a company that takes risk. 0344 499 1000. Dave is in South Wales. Hi, Dave.
Hi, good evening.
Yes,
it's a pretty chaotic state of affairs with immigration.
Isn't it just?
And it all goes back to the fact that we, as a nation, we don't want to take control. Now, Brexit voted to control our borders, not close them, but to control them. And the civil service did not set up the means for any applications from abroad.
Well, they don't want to, do they? Because arguably our institutions have become politicised to such an extent that they are doing everything they possibly can to drive their own agenda.
Exactly, which is why we should first we got to do is take control of the civil service. And
good luck with that. What are you going to do? Fire everybody?
Yeah, if I have to, yes. Because
I think that's a really important point that you've made there, Dave, which is, so often we say, oh, it's the Prime Minister, oh, it's the Minister. In fact, instead, we should be looking at the institutions who are supposed to be doing this job. And for years, I remember, 20 years ago, the then Home Secretary said the Home Office was not fit for purpose. And time again, that's been repeated. Nobody has gone in and reformed these institutions that are no longer fit for purpose.
Well, no, that's the establishment, isn't it? That's our problem in this country, is the heads of departments in the civil service, the entrenched lords in the House of Lords.
What would you do with them? Ding them all?
Yeah, I mean, we've got to take... if we have got a democracy, then it's the people who are in charge, and that is the Prime Minister.
Okay, but then you say that we got a democracy, but then look at the share of the vote. So Keir Starmer got, 32% of the vote, and he's got a landslide. So how can that be allowed?
It has happened. That is the rules. But the thing is, what we've got to demand is that our Prime Minister brings all these errant nobodies into line. The Lords, the establishment, the civil service, they've got to start working for Britain, not for themselves.
Well, they're busy working from beaches all over around the world.
Yeah.
So what do we do about that? How do we get them back to work then, Dave?
I have no idea, but as I say, you said, would I sack them? Yes, I would. If they're not...
Yeah, but Labour have just brought in these new laws, which makes it even more difficult to fire people than it was before.
I know. This is the thing at all. I mean, it's the same with the Metropolitan Police. We got rogue officers, but we can't sack them because they haven't done anything. They don't contravene the laws as they stand, thanks to Sadiq Khan and...
yeah, no, well, I've renamed our Mayor of London, or Night Mayor of London. I think it's Sadiq Khan, because he can't govern, he can't lead, and he hasn't got an ounce of inspiration, and all he does is...
our main problem is the reluctance to take control. And
well, I'd love to take control, but we seem to be lacking in any kind of control over anything, Dave.
Yeah, exactly. That means that the one person who is answerable to the people is the Prime Minister, and he has to take control of the civil service.
Well, when he was asked, he was asked, "Are you in control?" And he said, "Yes, I am." Yeah. I mean, he'll give you. If he was here, he would defend himself. He would say, "We've applied all this money, and we're doing all these things, and we're cooperating with our European friends, and blah blah blah." And I would say to him, "Prime Minister, it's not working."
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, the thing is that they would stopping the boats is fairly simple. Put the Navy in the way. I mean, if You can advertise it all across the continent that the Navy will be there to stop them. If they don't...
I mean, the thing is that, you see, I like the idea of the Rwanda policy. What I didn't like about it is that it was going to deal with so few people. So what I would do is I would say, listen, the second you arrive on our shores, you will be processed and you will be put on a plane. And I don't care whether your application is genuine or not. You will be put on a plane, and where you are going to be processed, every single one of you will be Rwanda. So you get on your boat and you come here. Of course, you'll have a fair trial and we'll listen to every single one of you, but it'd probably be easier and better if you didn't destroy your documents, you came over the legitimate route, and you can try your chances.
Being honest about it, the state of Britain today, any immigrant would be better off going to a developing country where they can make a life for themselves.
Well, there's an argument for that, because it's such I was going to say something that would get me taken off air, Dad. It's not great, is it, here?
No, I mean, the thing is that we need control, and that is the top and bottom of it. We can't have departments running riot. We have the Prime Minister and the ruling
party. Do you agree with the poll here that says that Labour, Nigel Farage would make sweeping gains, taking an extra 67 seats from Labour if an election were held today. Labour would be reduced to 228 seats, still be the biggest party, but they would lose their majority. Do you think that, I mean, that's quite an impressive turnaround in terms of fortunes for Keir Starmer to have navigated?
Well, going by the public opinion and the polls, if Keir Starmer had any sense of decency, he would call another general election.
Well, I think that's probably right. I don't think he will, though, Dave. I mean, now he's got power, he's going to cling on to it with his greasy little mittens. Dave in South Wales, thank you. 03444991000 is the telephone number. Here's Jane in Marbella. Hi, Jane.
Hi, I hope you got my message.
Well, I don't know which one, Jane.
Well, it was a personal message.
Oh, all right. Well,
I left it right at the beginning of the programme.
Oh.
Wishing you long life.
Oh, I see. Well, that's very kind. Thank you.
I happened to take the publication online each week.
Yes. No, you read indeed. Well, I did announce the very sad news of the passing of my father some weeks ago, but that's very kind. Thank you.
No, I happen to have seen it. I always go to the online of it, of the publication, and I saw it.
Well, that's very kind. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyway, I actually called about school, but before that, I am very anxious to see the outcome of this debate on the 6th of January. Are you familiar with it?
Which one are we talking about?
Right, there is there's been a petition which has now reached over 3 million wanting the Labour Party out.
I don't think it's going to make a scrap of difference. I mean, I understand why people are doing it.
I know. And they have to respond, and this is on the 6th of January.
I think he'll respond. I think there'll probably be a debate in Parliament, and then they'll go, no, we've got a majority. Thank you very much indeed. That'll be it.
I mean, it is a joke. Now, I actually called about schools.
Oh, yes. What should we be teaching our younger people?
What I personally feel, and I've felt it for many years, I think it's the parents that are to blame in so many instances. I don't think it's fair on the kids.
I understand that, but Jane, how do you deal with the parent that can't be bothered or doesn't, and then the parent that genuinely either can't afford it or has so many problems themselves that means that they have to rely on the state to do the job that they should be doing? Because there is a line between the two, isn't there?
There is a line, but I feel these, what I call dysfunctional families or parents, should have some education how to bring a child up.
I mean, for example, what I would say is if you are a parent that takes your child out of school and your child is benefiting from a free school place, if it's a private school, if it's independent fee paying, and if the school agrees for you to take your child out or whatever it is, then fine, that's their choice. But if you are dealing with a system that is provided by the taxpayer, if you take your child out of school, you should lose that free benefit.
I agree with you, but I'm actually referring to a different aspect.
Oh, yes.
Where the kids have no manners, are not polite, who do not concentrate in school. The parents don't bother to go to evening classes. It's wrong. The parents need educating because this is a type of background they themselves have come from. You know as well as I do, there are a couple of generations of parents that have never worked. They don't care about the kids.
So what should be done? Because arguably, or many people would say, you're then punishing the child for the fact that they've got useless parents.
Yes, but, you know, children learn what they're taught at home. It's all, I mean, of course, I mean, you know, I come from a background of private prep public school, and that applies to my niece and nephews too. But children pick up what they're taught at home.
Well, they do. But then how do you turn a nation into one in which self-responsibility and personal responsibility is to the fore?
I would like to see these so-called social workers educating the parents.
Well, good luck with that, Jane. But thank you very much indeed for your call and indeed your kind words. Much appreciated. Right, we must move on. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. Get your calls in very quickly because I want to hear from you about what Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, should do about, smashing the gangs, because currently that's not working. 0344 499 1000 on that. Plus, what should we do to encourage overseas investment into the UK? We'll take more of your calls. That's next on Talk.
Caused him heartache. That really hurt him, I think, in the end. and not getting reelected, and allowing Ronald Reagan to come in as a new, fresh voice of hope. So, he only served one term. He also, though unfortunately, came in at a time because of the Iranian situation. There was an energy crisis, which led to gas lines. You had people lining up for miles.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
11 minutes to 10 o'clock. Well, at 10, it's going to be Petri Hoskin. She'll be with me in about 7 or 8 minutes' time to tell me what's coming up on her show. Meanwhile, we've got time to squeeze a few more of your calls in. 0344 499 1000 on either the immigration stories. Smashing the gangs isn't working, so what action should the Prime Minister take? Or what should be done to encourage overseas investment into the UK? Francis and Devon, thank you for your kind words. Let's get you back on Talk with a regular show. Yes, absolutely, I agree. Although I will be regular because I'll be back tomorrow night. Only one way you can stop the boats. Sink them, says Frank. What action should the Prime Minister take, says Lucy. He should call a general election now, for goodness sake. Good luck with that. If it was for humanity and saving people, then do it pro bono. No, I don't think he would. That's about the lawyer that we were speaking to earlier. So let's get some more of your views and thoughts on the radio. Stephen is in Cambridgeshire. Stephen, good evening.
Hello, James.
Hi, Stephen.
I don't normally agree with you on a lot of things you say, but tonight you've actually swayed me back.
Have I redeemed myself, Stephen?
Yeah, I think the old human rights lawyer pushed your buttons a bit.
Well, it's just... Here's the thing. I mean, I can't be... If one's speaking on the radio, I have to sort of say a combination of what I think, but also I have to recognise that if it wasn't for immigration, somebody like me wouldn't be here. So it would be wrong for me to say we pull down the shutters, nobody should ever be allowed to come to this country ever again and all that sort of thing. But in terms of, what is realistic and what British people and taxpayers and the voting public want, to have, net hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people, it just can't work. And when you've got people arriving, 40, 50,000 in a year on small boats, to give them, all these things and put them up in hotels at great expense, when you've got people on our streets who can't afford and, to do anything, and they're not being looked after, and these people are, it just doesn't make sense to me, Stephen.
At the end of the day, James, you can't fit a gallon into a pint pot. Britain, he kept saying about how rich we are. Yeah, OK, that's fair enough. But at the end of the day, the money runs out somewhere, doesn't it?
But also one thing he was very happy to say, well, we're a democracy and we should do this. And he was very unhappy with the notion that if that democracy decides, to pull down the shutters, is he going to stop doing what he does? No, he's not.
No, but what really gets me is the majority, and I don't want to appear racist on this, but the majority of the human rights lawyers appear to be Asian or of Asian descent.
Well, I think that, I'm not sure Keir Starmer is either of those things.
Well, no, I know, but he's an exception because he's just lined his own pocket, isn't he?
Well, I think there are plenty of examples. I think you have human rights lawyers from all different backgrounds, and I don't really mind where they come from. And I'm delighted if people...
At the end of the day, why... And I think the thing that is really getting everybody in this country is why should our standard of living go down so that somebody that comes here illegally, their standard of living goes up?
Well, you see, then you move into a whole discussion, which is this. It's almost circular. It's almost like you were designed to call me, Stephen, because then you go back to this conversation about our education system, and you have this discussion about critical race theory, and people saying, well, you must teach all these things in school so that people appreciate,
No, you
what happened.
You should teach British values, British. A bit of my background, I'm a gas engineer, and I used to go into 10 or 12 hours a day maintaining boilers on a city council contract. I won't say where, but I used to go to the same houses over a period of 8 to 10 years. And over that period, some of the migrants would learn to speak English, but the majority of them wouldn't. They'd all speak in their own language in their own house.
Now, you see, I have no problem with people who move to this country maintaining their traditions, speaking the language or whatever it is. That having been said, I think that if you move to a country, say, for example, if I moved to France, I would make every single effort to ensure that I spoke French.
Yes, but I used to have conversations with some of the tenants who were of different ethnicities, and they would speak to me like they'd assimilated, and they were normal. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but they'd assimilated, and it was like it was their country.
That's
Do you know what
exactly.
I mean?
But that's what you should do. If you come to a country, if you move to a country, I think you should learn to speak the language in the same way, and also the customs. So, for example, in this country, you have one husband or wife.
Yeah, exactly, and that's a big point.
Yeah.
Because Rupert Lowe is doing a fantastic job rooting out all the old backhanded ways of getting money out of the system.
Well, exactly. So there we go. Stephen, thank you for your call. I'm glad that I've persuaded you into the Church of Max. Meanwhile, let's go to Larry, who is in Rainsford, I think.
Yeah, come on, James. Let's get Keir Starmer. Let's give him a bit of time to get over his funeral today. We're not being very sympathetic towards him at the time, but I just suggest we mobilise all the British forces, we stick the Navy in the Channel, we put the Army on the banks, and we stop all those immigrants coming through by using our military forces.
Well, Larry, I think you make a really important point that, of course, whether it's the Prime Minister and whether I agree with him or not, certainly to have empathy towards his own personal situation and the loss of his brother. It's sad to deal with the loss of any family relative, and one should always give time and space for that. Having said that, as you say, he's Prime Minister, and sadly, I just don't think he's doing a good job.
Oh, he's useless.
Oh, all right. You tell me what you really think. There we go. Larry, we must leave it there, but thank you very much indeed for your call. It's very good to chat. Meanwhile, somebody who we've worked together on many occasions, yet the excitement of being able to hand over from one to another has not afforded us at this place.
No, we've never done it.
We've never done it.
We've never done it.
We are virgins.
There is a reason for that, probably.
Yeah, because we used to be at different times of day.
And they don't want us together.
No, I haven't been cancelled.
They don't want us together. That's the thing.
No.
We'd be too good.
Well, I don't know. Let's see how we get on.
Right, so coming up with me. Well, I've got some astonishing information about NATO, which you're going to have to listen to if you want to hear this, because I read this book, which is absolutely brilliant. Actually did read it.
Who Will Defend Europe?
Yeah, and it all talks about NATO's obligations.
Because, defence is... You have reported on defence and know your way inside and out.
I love it. I'm an anorak with it.
You are, but better than most.
I have a handle on it, let's put it that way, and I have my own anorak, because I'm really into it. Like I said, I don't know many
Should we be worried?
Yes.
OK,
but there's that information about
NATO,
as to why
which we need to be worried.
I didn't know until I read this book. So anyway, I'm going to be talking to the author of this book, and we're going to be looking at that, Who Will Defend Europe? And also, we've got the sport, and we've got all sorts of lovely things coming up as well. But what I want to talk about at midnight is, because this is the end of 24, what's been the best and the worst thing about 2024 as we look forward to 2025? Who are the people? It could be something personal. It could be a favourite person. It could be your least favourite person. I think I know who's going to win that.
Well, I think somebody won Plank of the Year.
Well, we're going to do our own version of that. Good. We're going to be looking to see, and also your favourite moments, or your favourite, or your least favourite moments. All of those things. Like I said, it could be a family thing. It could be a big world stage thing. It could be the death of Liam Payne, if you're a big fan of him. You know, it could be all of those things. So that's what we're going to look at. We're going to say goodbye to 24.
I think there's a lot to say goodbye to. I just wish. I'm normally a glass half full sort of person.
Yeah, me too.
And I'm not really very glass half full about 2025. There's a lot of stuff coming down the pipes, not just because of the incompetence of this government, but all the things which are going on all around the world.
Yeah, I mean, we mustn't lose hope.